Kia mā kina ki uta ki mi mā taratara ki tai. E hi heke ane te atakura, he teo, he hoka, he hauhu, tihe Māori ora.
Thank you. Right, so welcome to everybody, council staff, presenters, members of the public, not yet, but welcome when they do arrive, either present or online, and those watching at a later date. Council briefings are recorded, public gallery attendees' presence implies your consent to being broadcast, and in case of an emergency, follow the building wardens to the nearest exit. The meeting point is across the road at Peace Park, and bathroom facilities are located at the chamber foyer entrance. We have an apology from Mayor Nandua. He will be here for the public excluded part of the agenda today, but not this morning's. And Councillor O'Brien and Councillor Whitaker has another commitment at 9:30, so he'll be leaving us about then. Right, so we don't have any acknowledgements that I'm aware of, but if anyone's got one now, please raise your hand. No, lovely. Don't have any public presentations, so we'll move first on to the role of the Water Services Authority, and we've got a couple of guests. I'll let you introduce our guest speakers, and welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for giving up your time, Tim and Neil, to be with us.
Tēnā koe, Madam Chair, and tēnā koutou councillors. Firstly, apologies for those massive bald heads on the screen behind you. That's probably quite imposing. Yes, kia ora everybody. Tim Cadogan, I'm the engagement specialist here at the Water Services Authority. Prior to that, I sat round a table like you did for 13 years, including 8 years as the Mayor of Central Otago. So strength to your arm for the job that you've undertaken. I understand you've got 3 new councillors, so the purpose of today's role really is, as mentioned by Madam Chair, an overview of the role of the Water Services Authority, but also an update for councillors who are returning on some mahi that we were completing last year. I'll just pass over to Neil. Neil, you can introduce yourself, please.
Morena, and thanks for the opportunity to join you today. So my name's Neil Shaw. I'm the manager for the Water Services Authority for the North Island. I have 2 teams of staff, total of 6, 3 staff in an office in Hamilton, which is where I'm based, and 3 staff in an office in Palmerston North. And we manage the operational arm of the Water Services Authority, liaising with councils across the North Island, of which there is currently 45 that we look after, including Whakatane Council. So my team is there to support your water services staff through the mahi that they do, ensuring that we've got drinking water that's safe for everyone every day. So thank you.
Thanks very much, Neil. With permission of you, Madam Chair, I'll just bring up a slideshow that we can take ourselves through. And hopefully
Sorry, Tim, are you happy to take questions as we go, or would you rather they're at the end?
I think probably easier to do it at the end. It actually helps with time management as well. If I know I've got 15 minutes to talk and 15 minutes for questions, but we may also pick stuff up as we go. So if that's okay with you?
Yes, sir.
All right, excellent.
Thanks so much. Yes.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so the Water Services Authority, look, probably you folk know, we were set up as a result of the Havelock North Water incident that happened in 2016. 5,000 people made sick, dozens hospitalised, and a role played in the deaths of 3 or 4 people. It doesn't get any worse than that when you talk about what can go wrong with water supply out of a council supply, and it really changed everything in the water scene in New Zealand. Regulations were enforced, new regulations were brought in, and Taumata Arowai was created. Now, I do have people say to me occasionally, look, it was 10 years ago now, you know, it's a once, so let's move on. So what we'll do is we'll have a look at how things are a bit more recently, shall we? If I can just get my slide to move across, and it doesn't want to. For some reason it's, there we go. Always recalcitrant on the first go. So this is a camping ground in Canterbury that you should be seeing on your screen now. It runs off a private supply, so that's the first thing to point out. This wasn't a council supply, but it does illustrate well what can and does go wrong. In September last year, an E. coli bacteria got into this water supply, meaning E. coli was coming out of the tap, along with potentially other bugs. Now, E. coli is a bacteria. It's a family of bacteria, actually, and you will have some E. coli in your digestive system now. It's very, very common. It comes in all shapes and sizes, and it's used in water safety or drinking water safety as what's called an indicator species, because it indicates. It's easy to find in the water, a lot easier to find E. coli than a lot of the other pathogens that I'll be talking about. What it means basically is this fecal material in the water that people are drinking. So, yeah, not good. Now, in this case, in this camping ground, it was way beyond not good, because generally E. coli is not terribly harmful. It can be quite beneficial, depending on what type it is. But the one that was in this camping ground's water supply that was coming out of the tap was a particularly bad one. A number of children, 20 or 30 children, got very sick from it. Some of their family members got sick from it when they got home. A number of children were hospitalised, and one child, regrettably, was in hospital for 10 days. And her father was actually in the media talking about how deeply concerned they were that she would lose her kidney function for life. That is how sick this child was from drinking water out of the tap. Now, to give you the most recent update that we possibly can, every week across the country, suppliers test their water at various degrees of regularity, depending on the size of the supply. And as a consequence of that, every week we get told here how many E. coli, amongst many other notifications there are. How many supplies have E. coli in the water that week? And last week across New Zealand, 10 supplies had E. coli in the water, and 2 of those supplies were actually council supplies. So one message I'd really, if nothing else, if councillors take away from this this discussion is, most of our water is safe most of the time, but not all of it is safe all of the time. And we can't afford to take our foot off the pedal or look backwards or just think she'll be right, because there is a terrible habit in New Zealand of going she'll be right with our water. Most of the time it is, but when it isn't, boy, things can go wrong. So how do you make sure that it is right? Get the basics in place. Source water protection. Look after that source water. Make sure you have good source water. And with the Havelock North debacle, that was sheep feces getting into the bore water that started that whole massive incident. Filtration's the next step. It's very important. It will remove a lot of pathogens. High quality filtration will. But also, really importantly, it clarifies the water for the disinfection to work, the next stage. Disinfection is chlorination in many cases. Been used for over 100 years in the treatment of water for drinking. More modern treatment is UV treatment. And then secure distribution. This is the pipes under the ground. It's so very important. Often as a mayor and as councillors, you probably think, well, you know, we've got water loss and that's not good because we're treating the water and so forth. But water loss also means that you can get bugs coming into the water. When the pressure drops, if water's going out, pressure drops, water and dirt can get in. So you've got to look after that pipe network too. Oops, I went too far at the time. Talking in council supplies, we will be talking about multi-barrier protection. So I just want to explain what this is. I mentioned chlorination just before. Chlorination will deal with 2 major sources of potential illness, one being bacteria like the E. coli I mentioned. Had there been chlorination in the Havelock North supply, wouldn't have happened. The second form of pathogens that this will treat is viruses, such as norovirus. Nobody wants to get norovirus. But what chlorine will not treat is a family of pathogens called protozoas. So these are things like Cryptosporidium that caused quite a number of people to get sick in Queenstown a couple of years ago. Giardia, we've all heard about people, I'm sure, that have caught Giardia, and again, not recommended. So those are 2 of the barriers that you have. A chlorination to deal with some of the pathogens. UV will treat for the protozoas that chlorination can't handle, but you also need what's called residual disinfection in your pipe network, because remember I talked about the pipe supply and how water can get in carrying pathogens. Well, you have residual chlorination, which is a very small amount of chlorine that travels through the pipe network to keep the water as safe in the last tap in the network as it is in the first tap. And that's basically how it works. Now, as you sit around that room, you're probably faced with members of the public. I know I was, who would say, and I get it in this job too, and some of you may be thinking it, look, your standards are too high. It's costing too much money to have these standards come in, etc., etc. There's a really simple response to that, and that is this. Firstly, what the barriers are doing, what the standards are doing is enforcing these barriers. And by doing so, things are playing up here, by doing so, we're stopping bacteria, we're stopping viruses, and we're stopping protozoas getting in the water supply and stopping people being sick. That is all the standards are simply doing, putting it most simple. So if people challenge you with that, you simply say to them, well, hey, how much fecal material is appropriate to have in water? Because they will agree that none is the appropriate amount. I haven't met anyone yet who thinks a little bit's okay. So people tend to agree it's none, and then it's simply a matter of saying, well, which is it that you don't want to treat for? Bacteria? Viruses? Do you not want to treat for Giardia? Which is it? And very quickly, that whole argument of the standards are too high tends to fall away, because all the standards are doing is stopping people getting sick from drinking tap water in New Zealand. Okay, what do we expect from council supplies here at Taumata Arowai? Fully comply with the rules are an acceptable solution, and if you're thinking, what's an acceptable solution? I'll explain that shortly. Fully comply with the standards, the drinking water standards. Respond promptly to safety risks. So if you, for instance, have a surface supply, there's a heavy shower of rain, goodness knows we get too many of those, and the water gets up and gets dirty and the plant can't handle it, your team have the robust risk management plans in place, which means they put in a boil water notice, they get the notices out appropriately so that people know they've got to boil the water and know why and so forth. And we're also looking for council supplies to demonstrate progress towards resilience. We are looking for supplies from councils to be resilient to disruptions by 2028. So, a whole lot less of the boil water notices or the conserve water notices and so forth that we're seeing now. So people can truly rely on their water supply. What can you expect from us? We talk about a proportionate response. I think the two examples I gave at the start of the kōrero illustrate this. The Havelock North situation, 5,000 people got sick because when something goes wrong with a council supply, it goes wrong big time. With that small private supply, nobody should have got sick, but only a small number did. So we're not as hard on the small supplies as we are on councils. We have to be, because if something goes wrong with a council supply, they're supplying many more people. But generally, councils fall in that voluntary space. Neil and his team, we do monitoring with minimal intervention, give feedback if issues emerge. But as sometimes things don't work out as well as they must under the law and the regulations, we do move into an assisted, where we start to get a bit more targeted, a directed, where we start to say, hey, you're not doing this, you need to do this. And at the very tip of the triangle there, the enforced. Now, you've got almost 4,500 square kilometres of area. You're going to have a lot of private schemes in the Whakatane district, I imagine. So one thing I want to talk to you councillors about is that pointy end of the triangle, because you're all in that room because you're really good community people. So I'm not talking about council supplies here, I'm talking about private supplies. Last year in Kaio in the far north, we actually had to, for the first time, get into that enforced space, and we, after many conversations, had to step in and say to the Far North District Council, you're going to have to take over this supply. We don't want to do that. The councils don't want to take on broken supplies. So what I'm asking for you connected community people, if you hear of community supplies in your district that are starting to get a bit shaky, maybe their infrastructure's failing, maybe the one person often running it is getting older and is a bit over it, talk to your people, get those people, get the scheme to talk to us. We actually want to help. That proportionate response is when those small schemes are starting to wobble, we want to really help them. We don't want to see them fail, and stepping in to help is the best thing that we can do. To do that, we've got a community supplies team, and in fact the middle lady there is from the Whakatane district, Marewa. They will help the small suppliers to look after themselves better. And we also have the Hamilton operations team nearby. So Neil, I'll give you the brief opportunity while I have a sip of water to introduce your team.
Great, thank you, Tim. Yes, there's the Hamilton operations team. As you can see, I'm based in the Hamilton office alongside my senior water services officer and two water services officers. At the moment, one of those team members is assigned as the main point of contact to Whakatane District Council, and we have a good working relationship with your team there, managing the 10 registered suppliers that you have across your rohi. So, thanks, Tim.
Thanks, Neil. Okay, let's talk about some of the rules. I'm going to be very brief on this one because I'm conscious of time. The drinking water quality assurance rules, they're simply there to basically the rules on how to run a centralised supply. For staff who may be in the room, you're probably familiar that we did a consultation on this last year with a look at some tweaks. Just to update you on that, we're not quite through the consultation, looking at what we got in from that yet. Probably a month or two away from coming out with a final result. I talked about the acceptable solutions early on. I'm a country boy. I could talk about these all day. I won't. These are ways that small schemes, be it a small council scheme or more primarily schemes out in the community, can actually become compliant with the rules if they aren't already, or with the regulations if they aren't already. They use endpoint treatment, which is filters and UV in the house rather than centralised treatment. There's a lot of changes made in September, so I just want to get through to you folk that we've made a lot of changes. We've made it cheaper, we've made it easier, we've put in much better how-to resources and so forth. If small suppliers in your community have looked at the acceptable solutions before as a means of becoming compliant, which if they're serving 25 people or more, they need to, if they aren't already, by November 2030, just get them to have another look at these, get them to have a look at our website, because we have made them much, much better. Okay, on to wastewater. December last year, the government bought in the first wastewater standards for across the whole country. How these operators, instead of having all the regional councils and unitary councils coming up with different standards wherever you are in the country, now there's a standard for everybody, and it works for discharge to water. Councils will look at, are we going to reconsent, or if you're putting a new plant in, discharge to water. Your council will have that discussion with your iwi and with your community. If you, at the end of that, decide you're still going to discharge to water or continue to discharge to water, you then look at the contaminant level depending on the water body you're discharging to. If you're discharging to the open ocean, that is a different standard to if you were discharging to a lake or to an estuary or to a low flow river or whatever. You fit that standard by the plant that you have operating or that you're going to operate. The regional council or whatever's going to come in that space can't make the standard higher. Importantly too, if you get a consent under this, the consent is for 35 years. Same for discharge to land, except for they look at the type of land as opposed to the type of water. Other roles, emergency management, we have a role in monitoring suppliers' response, national engineering design standards. We're quite exciting these. We're just working on these now to make a standard across the country where infrastructure under new subdivisions, guess what, will all be the same across our country of 5.5 million people. What a great idea that is. And we have an oversight role in stormwater. Last slide before questions, because I am conscious of time. Those two reports on the left are really important, I think, for councillors. I used to love them when I was a mayor. They come out about the middle of every year. Drinking water regulation report, network environmental performance report. They tell you how your supply is doing compared to everybody else. And you're able to then sort of go, oh, well, okay, that's good, but that isn't. Why isn't that good? You can ask your staff. The compliance monitoring and enforcement strategy is a lot of what I've been talking about for the last, I reckon it was just on 15 minutes. So let's put those giant heads back on the screen and come to question time. I'm in your hands, Madam Chair. Or we're in your hands.
Thank you. That's a great presentation. Right,
Thank you.
councillors, do we have any questions? Carolyn.
Thanks, Tim and Neil. That was really good overview. I just had a question really about what role fluoride plays in now in the monitoring and I guess it's still at a community level, or if we've got some directive on that.
Fluoride treatment in water is absolutely outside of our gambit. It's handled by the Ministry of Health, so none of our legislation or anything has anything to do with fluoride, so not in a position to answer anything on that question. Sorry, Councillor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, gentlemen. You talked before about having these small rural community water schemes that are totally separate from council, and that if they're failing, we should encourage them to come into the fold. What if you have a small, and I know of a few schemes where someone's subdivided and it still runs off the main water pump of the farm, and they've sold the farm and all that sort. Can we force our way into there as council and say, look, we don't think that this is working very well, you're not supplying enough water to people for their daily needs, et cetera, et cetera. Can we force our way in and take over the pump?
There are legislative means that we have and that were used in Kaio to basically achieve that, and that would be the end of, I would hope, a lot of discussions between yourself, Neil and his team, and our folk. Neil, do you want to comment on any of that?
Yep, I can, thanks. So in August last year, the government took the Water Services part of the Local Government Act out of that act, created their own its own act called the Local Government Water Services Act 2025. So there's lots of legislation that sits in there, including the ability for council to step in if they have identified that there's an issue. Under that Act now, there's Section 69, which requires a 3-yearly assessment by local authorities on all community water supplies in their region. So that is required by 1 July this year. So your waters team should be, if they haven't already, starting to work on that assessment across your community, identifying those community supplies that need that exist, and assessing how they're operating, what their needs are, and making those calls. And that information will get published on your council website and become available to the authority as well. So,
Thank you for that. Just a supplementary question, Madam Chair, is that, because I know of one place where they subdivided the farm into 10 blocks, and then, being very clever, they sold the bit of land that the pump was on to another person. And so there you've got all these unconnected people, 11 people, and the gentleman then decided that he wasn't going to let his pump be used for the locals, and he decided to cut it off. So we can enforce that to say, actually, this is the existing arrangement that you have to supply water to these people, and therefore you must continue. Is that correct?
Look, I used to be a lawyer, so I know the dangers when you're dealing with legislation, particularly new legislation, and
Good morning, how are you, Em?
Good. Reader's Digest version of an overview. So, look, wouldn't like to comment. Liz, you're not on mute. Wouldn't like to comment with such an overview. It sounds like something that could get quite tricky quite quickly. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Mac.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you very much, gentlemen. I might have missed it at the beginning with your introduction. So what is the monitoring process of Taumata Arowai over councils? Is it council honesty reporting, or do you act as a bit of an auditor once a year?
Under the legislation, there's a number of monitoring features that have to be undertaken. So we talked about E. coli, but there's many other things such as, and can happen in Whakatane, arsenic in the water. So there's a lot of chemical compounds that also have to be monitored. And just depending on the size of the scheme, the amount of monitoring that's needed ranges from basically continuous monitoring down to doing testing 3 or 6 monthly. That's legislative requirements. Staff are very well aware of what the requirements are, and if we don't get the testing done, there's questions raised as to why. Is there anything you want to add to that, Neil?
Yep. So your team report those testing results to the authority in line with the requirements of the level of the supply, and you have, as I said, 10 registered suppliers, and they are at varying levels. And then there's an annual report that comes to us by the end of February each year, which is the whole range of all the reporting requirements. And we look at those and identify where there may be some non-compliance, whether that non-compliance creates a risk to the drinking water, or it's simply a blip in the system, which sometimes happens due to power outages and other things. So, yeah, and that's what we look at. So it is self-reporting. We do rely on that coming in, and if it doesn't come in, well, then we'll be asking questions.
Thank you. Just a supplementary. So in your analysis of the way that Whakatane is delivering its water services at the moment, do you have any feedback, like where we stand in amongst the 70-odd councils?
That's yours, Neil.
Yes. Yeah, listen, we have, there's some ongoing issues in Ruatoki, and that's associated with the position of the bore. So over the years, the Whakatane River course has changed direction, and now it's right up against where the bore is situated, which has caused high turbidity in heavy rain events, meaning that the UV system that operates that kills protozoa cannot function under high turbidity. So there's a precautionary boil water notice every time there's a heavy rain event up in Ruatoki Valley. Yeah. Likewise, we had issues at Murupara with chlorination, which we think we've resolved, and that included myself and other members of our team attending some public meetings with Ngāti Manawa, with your previous Mayor De Luca, and helping achieve chlorination in the Murupara supply. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you very much.
Well, yes, Councillor Boynton.
Kia ora kōrua. Thank you for your presentation. Mihi atu kia kōrua, mihi atu kia koe Tim. I just had a pātai around te mana o te wai. I know that there was a review being done by government as to how that was applied. Are you able to clarify what has happened with regards to te mana o te wai and the current national policy position or statement?
Essentially, the law was that the phrasing and so forth was taken out of the law. I understand. Nearly, I'm familiar that's about the extent of my familiarity, was that Te Mana o te Wai was removed from the law.
It was taken, it was taken out of the Water Services Act, yes, but I understand it's still part of the National Environmental Standards for Fresh Water.
Supplementary?
Not 100% sure of that, but yeah.
Supplementary. If a council was working with iwi in terms of consulting or looking at their input into their water supply or systems, is the council itself able to consider elements of te mana o te wai with that iwi?
Council relationships with iwi, obviously, in the space of water are absolutely crucial, and it will be for each council to undertake those discussions and kōrero in good faith, and I think, how does one put it? Look, I believe so. It's up to your council how your relationship with iwi is handled.
Great, thank you.
Kia ora.
Oh, we have another question from Councillor Wilson. James.
Yes, thanks for this. Just to go to wastewater, I mean, a lot of the regulations, well, they're changing to where it's got to be good water coming out, just discharge, but also a lot of iwi now sort of saying we can't discharge to water, into the rivers, into the sea, which only comes back to land discharge. Is that long term, is that going to change drinking water standards at all?
The wastewater standards that as discussed, that came in December 19 last year, how they operate is that if a council decides that it's going to continue, if you're having to reconsent a wastewater plant that is discharging to water, or if you're putting a new one in and you're considering that, then at the territorial authority level, so at your level, you have the discussion with iwi and with the rest of your community to go, is it appropriate for us to continue to discharge to water, or do we want to move it to a land-based option? So that decision, which was often made at a regional council level or even at an environmental court level, now sits with the council to decide, taking input from the community, as to whether or not treatment of wastewater and disposal to water, if that's what you're currently doing, is going to remain appropriate for your community, obviously with significant iwi input. There is a caveat to that, though, is that Section 254 of the Act says that the overall economic cost must be taken into account in the making of that decision. moving forward. So there's a really interesting balance there for councils to work their way through. I recognise that.
Thank you. I've got another question from Councillor Hamill.
Thank you. Just thinking about the funding, I understand you're a Crown entity and there's some funding through levies as well. How is the funding model for Taumata Arowai going to change as we progress to CCOs and our or in-house business units? Is that going to look much the same, or
Yeah,
how's it going to change?
it will look. Thank you. It will look much the same. It'll just be a different name on the check, I guess. So for you folks sitting in Whakatane and retaining an in-house business model, your levy will still be paid by your council. For your neighbours who are perhaps going into a water entity, it'll be all caught up by that water organisation, and they will be paying the levy essentially on behalf of those councils. I believe, actually, as I say that, I'm presuming that. I think that'll be how it would have to operate. If I've got that wrong, I'll come back and let you know, because as I'm saying it, I said I used to be a lawyer, and I always like to check in the back of my head whether I've actually made that up or not, and whether I've got a source of truth for it. So I will find out for you. I think that's right, though.
Lovely. Well, we'll take one final question.
Yeah, just a final political question. If there is a change of government this year, is the future of Taumata Arowai secure?
Yeah, look, who knows? I taking a very yes, look, I think it will be for a couple of reasons. Firstly, the Labour opposition have said that they're not going to interfere with local water done well, and I recall very clearly their saying of that. Secondly, when the Water Services Act was passed in 2021 that established Taumata Arowai as a result of Havelock North, it had significant cross-party support. Whilst National and ACT didn't vote for it, the reason they didn't vote for it was they felt it was that act initially said that if you had one house that supplied water to another house, you were a water supply. So a farmhouse and a farm manager's house, if they supplied water, they were a water supply. Those two parties felt that that was a little bit ridiculous and have changed that law so that now if it's a domestic supply, it has to supply 25 or more people. My understanding, and I was fairly heavily involved at the time, was that was the big hiccup they had. So I think it's safe to say that we have strong cross-party support in the country for our role and for the safety of drinking water in Aotearoa.
Right, well, that looks like that's the end of our questions, gentlemen, and thanks, Neil and Tim. Thank you very much for your time today. That was very informative, and we look forward to working with you both in the future. So,
thank you very much, Madam
Thank you
Chair.
very much.
They were excellent questions, I'd have to say. Done a number of these presentations, and they were really good probing questions. And just wishing you all the very best for the term ahead, having come from the seat that you sit in. I admire your position, and I wish you well in what's going to be a very, very interesting term ahead. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for your time as well, and we'll invite our next presenters to the table. Thank you.
Genuinely, but you forget because you look at the screen.
I have asked for us to trial being able to utilise the cameras.
Regional council's cameras to fix up the sound of who's asking the question. We think we've got this available.
We have. We do.
Right, moving on. We have got our submissions we have got 60 minutes scheduled for this, which means our morning tea break is scheduled for 10:35 a.m. Welcome, Walter. Welcome, Lainey. And Sarah, are you going to stay down the back there, or would you like to join us at the table? It's up to you. No, if you're not needed, then you stay. You're welcome to stay at the back, Sarah. I just saw your name here on our sheet, so.
I should note that unfortunately Paul isn't well today. He was going to be talking in some detail around the first part of this, so we're going to do our best, but we may have to take some things away and come back to you if there are any questions about the detail.
Thanks, Lainey, and tēnā koutou. Yep, so it's not a tag team anymore. It's a me, and I'll do my best to support you through Bay of Plenty Regional Council's submission process. So Bay of Plenty Regional Council are consulting on a long-term plan amendment and on development of their long-term plan for the coming financial year. On 26th of February, a deputation from Regional Council came to your committee meeting and presented their consultation document to you for those of you that were present at that. In this session, what I'd like to do is just remind you of the consultation topics that they presented to you on that day, and then we'll work through those one at a time, just to kind of tease out any key concerns or feedback that you'd like included in our submission back to the Bay of Plenty Regional Council. So I've got some key dates on that slide there. Today's the 25th of March. Beyond that, next week on Thursday, we'll be looking to bring a submission to you for your approval. So it's a pretty quick turnaround. The submission deadline is actually next Thursday as well. So, yeah. And then we have hearings, or Bay of Plenty Regional Council are holding hearings. And I guess a question to the floor might be whether we'd like to send somebody along to those hearings. So, the Bay of Plenty Regional Council are consulting on 3 topics and this 4th general anything else topic. The first topic is in the orange at the top there, optimising regional benefits from council investments. I'll do my best to work through this one. This is the one that Paul was going to step us through with far more experience on corporate structures than my pretty much non-existent experience, but I think we can talk at the kind of principled level as well around some of our submission points. So in terms of this topic, Quayside Holdings is a $3 billion plus investment portfolio. It's a huge investment portfolio that the Bay of Plenty Regional Council holds on behalf of the region. And one of the key drivers for them approaching this restructure is that, of course, we're approaching potential reform of our sector. So they really want to protect this investment portfolio and the benefits it provides for the future of our region. There are other drivers as well, and I think they noted when they came and present that this is not a new conversation that suddenly landed now. It is something they've been thinking about for some years since their last LTP. And with that, I guess with the urgency around the restructure of local government and the simplifying local government proposal that's come forward, that's an extra layer and quite a significant layer to this conversation. So some key drivers there around making sure the portfolio continues to be in local control and continues to provide those long-term benefits back to our region. The second topic is very much connected to the first one, and that's around some surplus and dividends from that investment holding that could be released in this immediate financial year. So that recognises that for topic 1, for the restructure, that's going to take a year and a half, or potentially a bit longer to bed in. And so they're recognising a need to potentially bridge a gap and provide immediate need funding is what they're talking about between now and when that topic 1 enables release of regional benefit funding. The third topic is it's a little bit of a wet finger to the wind kind of topic that helps to, I guess, provide some flavour as regional council move into their long-term plan around whether they should be investing more or less or the same into biodiversity. So they're developing their biodiversity strategy at the moment, and alongside the development of that biodiversity strategy, when that lands at the time of making their LTP investment decisions, they'll want to know, what's the sentiment in the region around investing more or less or about the same into biodiversity. Finally, topic 4 is a bit of a catch-all for any other policies that they had out, essentially fees and charges, and anything else that we might want to comment on. We do have a substantial anything else that we want to comment on, which is the Marata wastewater project, and so we'll have some thoughts to share back on that to the Regional Council as well.
Yeah, thanks, Walter. Good morning. Hi, Lainey. Just with the $20 million, I think they said it was for the whole wide of the bay. It wasn't an Eastern Bay of Plenty contribution, was it?
Correct. Yeah. So we'll work through each of these questions one by one, but quite right, that's the whole region. So once you think about, I guess, whether that's competitive and how that's distributed, you kind of have to think about how much might actually realistically be available to what we might want to put forward. So the first topic is this restructure of Quayside Holdings and their $3 billion investment portfolio. There's, as I said, a number of reasons why they're considering these changes now, not just the local government reform and protecting that investment for future, but also the reasons they've given is talking about our health environment being our environmental health being under strain, so making sure that they continue to use some of those returns to put back into that specific purpose, which is already what they do in terms of funding some of those environmental council functions, that the region's growing and needing to invest to meet some of its growth challenges, that there's general increasing demands on society for economic development, resilience and community wellbeing needs, and so having this fund available not just for growth challenges but for that broader set of challenges as well. They also note that their fund is growing. So from time to time it's healthy in that, to retest and review the way their fund is structured just to make sure it's still appropriate. What else do I want to cover here? The fund talks about, the review rather, talks about three core purposes that they'll test against each of the models that they've put forward. Those three purposes of the review were one, to ensure that those dividends, the first $50 million of surplus dividends from Quayside Holdings can be applied to essentially regional council functions and offsetting regional council rates. So that would be the first $50 million that they'll intend to spend on that purpose. The second second purpose being that anything over and above $50 million to invest into this kind of regional benefit, regional infrastructure sort of funding. And then the third one was to release capital from their special purpose funds that they use to develop Rangiora Business Park. So as that debt's repaid through divestment of some of those Rangiora Business Park properties, do they retire debt or do they use that to reinvest back into regional good? At this point, Paul was intending to work through each of those structures. I'm not really in a position to be able to do that. So there's those four options that they've put forward. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you're able to answer or even if Paul would. If we supported the status quo, does that, and the regional council is changed, does this option give government more likelihood of trying to claim it?
Okay. Specific. Oh, sorry. Through the
Political question. I suspect that some of that thinking is in the background, and I do notice that in their consultation document they do talk a lot about protecting the assets and the ability to recycle that in its local community. So I kind of read that as, some of these options around the structure are about that long-term security.
And certainly at the principled level, within any submission that we would make, we'd be talking about retaining local control, ensuring that continued long-term, regardless of which structure is in place, that principle of retaining control and retaining long-term benefit of this resource for the Bay of Plenty region. So there's four options that they've put forward. As I mentioned, I'm probably not in the right position to be able to talk to those, but the four options are...
Did Paul have a recommended option?
He did, yeah.
Are you going to get to that?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
So option one is the status quo. Option two is a trust model that captures all of the quayside holdings, including the Port of Tauranga, the broader portfolio of investments and the special purpose assets into one new CCO. The third option was the hybrid model, and this is the one that's actually being recommended to be supported by our council. And this is the one that essentially looks to potentially split the portfolio into two holdings, potentially two separate CCOs, or at least two separate structures. One which would manage the holdings that are primarily there for investment return. So that's Port of Tauranga, which is the 2.5 billion of their holdings. The non-port assets, though, the diversified portfolio of about 470 million, they would sit in one structure, and then the other structure would be there to look after the special purpose assets, which are the assets that are developed for potentially a broader set of objectives than making investment return. So things like the Rangiora Business Park, which is currently sitting there with a bunch of shares to Quayside.
We've just got a question from Councillor Dennis.
Just a brief question, the difference between the ports of Tauranga and the non-port assets. We all know that the ports of Tauranga are hugely successful. The non-port assets, are they self-sustaining if you put them into a different?
I'm sorry, I don't know the detail to that one, Councillor, but we could have a look at that and come back to you, unless somebody around the table knows the answer to that.
Councillor.
Walter. I know we're probably interrupting your flow, but just going back to the status quo, we've got a couple of comments from a council position. Do you have any advantages, do you think, in your opinion, for just maintaining status quo, or benefits?
Look, again, in terms of the detail of each of those structures, I'm not the person to talk about sort of corporate structures and what might be best. That was unfortunately
Back at a later time? Or?
that was where Paul was going to step in and speak to that topic.
Our CE says he's happy to comment, so.
And of course, Paul, coming from 20 years at Tauranga City Council, is a lot more familiar with the detail of in particular, the non-port assets and how they perform and even what they are. But I mean, my read of this is I think that there is an element of the structure is about protection of the structure, so more difficult to unwind in the long term. So that's one sort of thing to think about in terms of shifting the regional council out to the side and having standalone trust. The other thing to think about too is that when you start moving into options 2 and 3, they're quite similar to how your lines companies, your local electricity companies are established, and they have an operations arm, and the operations arm can often be broader than just electricity. So they have other companies. For example, Horizon has, they have I think a maintenance contracting company and a few other bits and pieces. So they have the business, and then they have trust, which under the Act that established these electricity and trust functions, the trusts have then their own constitutions around the delivery of funds or the dividend they get to put back into the community. So really, you know, when I look at them, it's more about where the trust sits and where the board sits. So here, you know, you'd be familiar with a trust board for Horizon, which manages both the operations and the Trust Horizon, but they have their own independent. Trust Horizon has its own independent board, and they would have a service level agreement between the two of them. And I'm also familiar with Well Networks in Hamilton, where it's slightly different, where the trust And both of those functions report into a trust, which is a bunch of elected officials. So they go through an election process. And the elected officials, much like a council, are then responsible for the delivery of the financial asset and the dividend that goes back into the community. And each model has pros and cons, and no model really is perfect. And I think actually just having a look at those and sort of thinking about, well, yeah, what have you seen operate well with the trust model here? And if you've been in other areas where they've been operating, just have a think about some of the pros and cons you've experienced. But I think at the end of the day, probably the key thing is whether or not the regional council is still 100% shareholder, or the regional council devolves that into some sort of function which then has its own autonomous role of managing the port and also managing the return of funding back into the community. Is that helpful?
Yes, it was. Thanks. Yeah. That's great. Right.
Thank you. I'll move to the recommendations or suggested submission points that Paul's put forward. And actually, as we worked on this, alongside this topic, I've been working on the next topic. These are so interrelated that what Paul has recently come back with very much overlap with the suggestions I've made in terms of submission topics for the next item. So that's a good place to be. We've got consistent thinking on it. What I can do is talk you through some of the principles that we might want to support in our submission. What we might have to do is just come back to you next Thursday with a little bit more explanation as to why option 3 structure to go with. But certainly in terms of principles, we can talk you through that. So firstly, regardless of structure, as I mentioned, the overarching principle would be to protect local control and protect the benefit that this can continue to provide for future generations. There are 3 purposes to the review, and we would also be looking to support those. So the first one would be the first 50 million that is used to support the exercising of regional council functions, environmental functions, and also to reduce general rates. The second is that anything over $50 million is for that regional benefit fund, so we would support that as well. And then the third being that point about recycling capital from Rangiuru Business Park for further regional investments rather than retiring that debt. So a principle underlying all of those is the need to ensure that the core investment portfolio is sustained and grown for future generations. So any use of that for those regional council functions or for regional benefit should only come after sustaining and growing that fund for future generations. We've got a potential submission point there around maybe needing flexibility around that financial parameter of the first $50 million and anything over that $50 million. So this is the surpluses from the investments, the first $50 million going to the regional council functions and to offset general rates. There's a potential point we could make there is, does that have to be a hard parameter? Do we need to leave some flexibility there that recognises economic context? And so, for example, if we're moving into an environment of hyperinflation, actually, could we use more than that $50 million to offset rates or to look for ways to reduce the pressure on society of that hyperinflation environment context rather than that automatically becoming available for regional benefit fund and new project investments. Similarly, if there were emergencies or pandemics, there might need to be flexibility to how those funds might be enabled to be used rather than having a hard parameter around that 50 million.
Got a question from Councillor James.
Yeah, rather than have designated amounts and that, could they not just have percentages of the money that's left over? So that it's varying, well, it'd be varying up and down as depending on the year, but...
I'm sure it's something we could feed back on. The ultimate principle being having some flexibility with that amount. So, maybe it is useful having a criteria in place for clarity, but then having flexibility to step out of that criteria in certain circumstances. The percentages might be one way of doing that, but having some guiding principles around the instances where you might step outside of however that policy parameter is in place is what we would suggest.
Got questions also from Councillor Boynton, then Councillor Dennis.
I was just following on from what you're suggesting about having that flexibility and whether or not that could also look at what happens.
Sorry, Tony, can you speak into the microphone?
I was just looking at that flexibility part and also maybe including responses to emergency weather events and, thank you.
So just a comment on what Councillor James is saying, and it's a general question really. If you had your set amount of 50 million, wouldn't that give you that ability to plan 3 or 4 years ahead? Whereas if you did percentage-wise, you would have to have a short list and a long list in case you got more or less. No, I don't know, I'm just asking a general question. Would it be better to do a set amount or a set amount plus percentage of increase or decrease? I don't know.
Might have to reserve that one for a Paul question, I would
I mean,
say.
I can see benefits in both, but I just wonder how that goes for long-term planning.
Yeah, take your point, Councillor. I think having certainty in the long-term plan about where funding comes from is probably quite important. So, I think it's definitely a valid point there. The next point that we'd raise in the submission is around ensuring that for that regional benefit fund, and this kind of steps into the next topic as well, but making sure there's very clear objectives and structure to manage how those funds are distributed, and with a very strong principle for regional equity in terms of how those funds are distributed. So this is really given, the gravity of population in our region is elsewhere, the gravity of the sort of intense growth pressures in our region is elsewhere. So that's kind of, I guess, what we're up against when we're competing essentially for funding. So it's about, can we make sure there's some principles embedded into the structure or the distribution of funding criteria that really has a strong focus on regional equity. And when I make that point, I guess I'm thinking back as well to 2013 release of regional councils' regional infrastructure funding, which was sort of circa $40 million, of which there was quite a chunk that went a Portuguese way. Our council wasn't successful at that time in accessing that fund, but just ensuring that gravity of particularly the West doesn't dominate the funding decisions, and that some of it comes this way. And then I guess the final point is actually saying, well, this is the model, this is the structure that our council would prefer. As I said, we'll have to get Paul to speak to that perhaps when we bring the paper for the submission to you next week.
So, yes, go. Councillor Boynton.
Just following on what you talked about what kind of model and how that looks, would that also refer to the setup or terms of reference or the makeup of the group? Because you talked about the dominance of whether or not Western Bay of Plenty would dominate. Would we look to something that's similar to what they currently have, like Māori representation?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure. We can share.
Steve's happy to comment.
No.
Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. I thought you said you were happy to comment. Sorry. My apologies.
I think for our submission, it's probably best to talk about those principles, and if we feel strongly about that principle, to make sure that we reflect that in our submission, because that might relate to whatever structure they land on, rather than whether that's best reflected in structure 3 versus structure 2. Wherever they land, we expect to see or have reflected these principles that we find are important. Might be the best way around it, but there will probably be a structure amongst those 4 that best align to those principles that we feel strongly about, and that's probably what I need to test with Paul, is if this is what's important to us, how does that align best to these 4 structural options? Yeah.
Stephen?
I just had a comment on the should it be a fixed or a percentage fund? And just by way of example, when I was working in Hamilton, it might be different now, but the well networks took a percentage, and the percentage was always negotiated with the well networks board. Sorry, the trust would negotiate that, so that was part of the thing they'd do annually, and then that was built into the budget. What it did do though is, so there was a lot of transparency about that. It enabled, at times, there were periods where well networks needed extra investment, so it was agreed to reduce the percentage so well networks could invest in its assets for periods of growth. So that is something worth thinking about too, is that the percentage just enables more investment to go into the port when it might need it or not. And the other thing I did notice too is, as a percentage, as a taker of funding, the community just responded to that and worked with that model. As I said, everything has pros and cons, but yeah, it wasn't it wasn't ever considered a problem. No one ever raised it as a problem, it being a percentage. But yeah, I thought that was probably an interesting thing to think about. It does enable the company itself to be able to grow as well using that funds.
Councillor Hamill?
It may be a Paul question, but I like the concept of the hybrid model. My question is about setup costs. Will there be a duplication, not just in financial, but also time for duplication of two trusts?
It certainly looked like it when I looked at it, yeah. Not a duplication of costs, just it would have additional structures in place. But I kind of looked at it also and assumed that in that model, it was like the Well Trust model, but it was actually the council as elected officials. So you still had that representative body that was then making decisions around that social investment part. And I suspect that's probably why it was the recommended control with elected officials rather than an appointed trust in terms of criteria and things like that. But I think that, yeah, definitely in that model there would probably be some additional cost, but then playing it out, if it was actually the council, then it would just probably be wrapped into the council's costs and structures anyway, so it could probably be quite minimal. But there would probably be a person or two on staff who would be managing aspects of that. Yeah.
Can I, just before we move on, what are you needing from us as the outcome to help you prepare? Are you wanting general direction that we support the recommendation of hybrid 3, or are you just wanting us just to absorb the information, just to be clear?
Yeah, so thank you. That's a good question, and really both. I think at this point we're at the stage of drafting the submission. Your committee meeting is Thursday next week, so the drafted submission needs to go on an agenda. So this meeting is really a critical opportunity to hear feedback from you rather than just receive information. If you've got any strong thoughts about what we should be reflecting in the submission, around preferred options, around concerns, around principles, then this is probably a really key moment to share those. We are in the process of drafting a submission along the lines of the recommended position statements.
So I was just going to finish. So I was going to say, should we then put the question, was everybody maybe generally supportive of the recommended hybrid option or not?
And the principles, sorry.
And the principles, sorry.
Yeah, I think my comment would be, this is not in our wheelhouse. To really be able to make the decision for the submission, and I guess if Paul and the team's recommendation is a hybrid, it's probably about the best thing that we can do to support it, unless we felt that wasn't going to help regional council come to a decision, bearing in mind they've got 6 councils feeding into this.
Yep.
I think the big thing about, sorry, I was just going to chuck in, I think the key points about the hybrid model going through it is that when you get to the hybrid model, it's separating the port business from the council
Yeah.
to the trust. And then the second bit is retaining some representative body that is making decisions about social investment. Those are the two key bits for me. And I suspect that's why Paul recommended that, because it kind of ticked two boxes that are.
Just a supplementary, does that also mean though that with the hybrid model with two sets, I'm thinking of if our mayors end up having to be the governors of this group, what does that mean? Three each way, or? Yes, it's a lot of unknown, but happy
They
to
would
support
still have control,
Paul's
though.
recommendation.
Yeah. Okay, so it looks like for option one, we've got general agreements for the direction to be hybrid option and the principles. Okay, so
Yeah,
if we
Kia ora,
do.
thank you. Yeah, and I guess with regards to principles, it's, those we can put forward regardless of which option we support or don't support. But then having a position on the hybrid model, which is also regional council's preferred model, I should add.
Oh, well, that's good to know. Should have led with that.
The other observation, and this one's related to regional equity as well, we currently don't necessarily have a submission point around it. It's a little future focused, but the initial 50 million that is there to support regional council functions and offset regional general rates. If and when councils go for a reform and a restructure, that's going to have to be completely reviewed as well. So, if that first 50 million is going essentially to regional council functions, what would that look like, say, if we were to land on 3 unitary authorities for the Bay of Plenty region? How would that 50 million get distributed? It's kind of not really a question for now, but it does tie into that kind of, regional equity. How would you determine, how that balance of resource is distributed throughout the region? Right. Topic 2, and we will progressively move through these topics faster, I expect. Topic 2 is very much related to topic 1. As I mentioned, this is about the release of up to $20 million for a regional benefit fund in this coming financial year, 2026-27 year, for bridging the gap or immediate need is the words they use. This would be available after they adopt their their annual plan this year in June. So it's not the submission process that we're embarking on now is not the application process. It's actually informing their decision as to whether they'll release this fund or not. If the decision is made to release that fund or part of that fund, then there will be an invitation to apply to that fund. The alternative is to keep that in reserve, bank further interest, I guess, that comes from holding it in reserve, and to use that for future use, whether that becomes future use for the regional benefit fund or for regional council functions and offsetting rates at that future stage. So there's 3 areas that we might want to submit on. So I've got those 3 listed there, and we'll work through those on the next slide. So one is whether we support the establishment of the fund. The second one is kind of key principles and objectives or criteria for the fund, and that's really around ensuring that we, have an opportunity to reverse engineer, well, not quite reverse engineer, but ensure that we have access to that fund, and then pre-signalling, not necessarily at the project level yet. That's something we'd have to step through if and when an application process opens, but maybe in terms of themes, saying to regional council, well, here's the types of things that we might be interested in applying for that fund.
Okay, so we'll give you some feedback, shall we, for that first one?
Yep.
There.
That would be
So
fantastic. Thank you,
I'll kick
Madam
it
Chair.
off. I think that, yes, establishing the fund's a great idea. So now, other comments from other councillors? Councillor Boynton?
Yes, I'd like to support that. I think it's a great idea as well, particularly for if we can get some assistance, any assistance would be great. Yes, support it.
Yeah, I'm in favour of it.
Lovely. Thank you, Councillor Burns. So, I'm not seeing anyone who would speak against the other option of holding in reserve. So I think we can say the submission to go for generally supporting establishing the fund. And also, if we go back to your former slide, I think it's a great idea pre-signalling what we might actually apply for. So I think that's a really great idea. So, sorry, I'm talking to myself.
Oh, yeah, I'll do that now. Yeah.
So I'll just repeat what I just said then.
Yes.
No,
Sorry,
it's all right, no problem. So also, we think it's a great idea pre-signalling what we might apply for as part of that submission. Sorry, what were you wanting to say, Wald?
Just that through discussions at the ELT level, it was raised that there's potentially this alternative application of the $20 million. It's nothing to do with the consultation document. It's just something that's come out of the conversation at the ELT level, which was around, we're in this environment of potentially moving into a really high inflation sort of year. Is there an opportunity already for that $20 million rather than making that a competitive fund that people are putting forward projects for, but actually using that to offset general rates more? So to increase that, offset that inflation impact, I guess. So
I was just whispering to Walt that I think if Paul was in the room, he would want us just to highlight that before we move too quickly to yes or no, just to make sure everyone is aware that there is actually the alternative just to use it to keep rates as low as possible.
Okay, well, I guess we would highlight that in our submission then, so.
As an option.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Is nothing else on option 2 you need from us, is there, or the?
I've got a couple more
one.
slides on the second topic. So one covers the views on funding principles and objectives and criteria. I think the left box there, the funding principles, they're things that we've already covered through topic 1. These two topics are very much connected. So that's around, ensuring that local distribution, that regional equity picture, having some agility in terms of future-proofing the fund. So that was around, that $50 million cutoff. So I think all of those 4 bullet points we've actually already discussed. When we come to actually putting together our application, should this $20 million become available for Regional Benefit Fund, then what we'd want is some very clear objectives and criteria from Bay of Plenty Regional Council so that we can make sure that we're aligning with those. What we've picked up from the consultation document is the bullet points in the second box. These aren't explicitly criteria. They haven't stated them as criteria, but they have been mentioned in their consultation document. So the first one is they talk about large-scale infrastructure projects. They don't define what large-scale means, but the previous release of regional infrastructure funding ranged from $1.75 application through to $20 million application. Aligning with Bay of Plenty Regional Council outcomes would be the second principle they mention. Outcomes, as you know from our own outcomes, tend to be quite broad, and so navigating alignment to those outcomes should be reasonably straightforward in anything that we put forward. One of the outcomes that I think we should lean on quite heavily, they do have an outcome around regional equity. So they have one that talks about partnering with tangata whenua, partnering with communities for regional equity, and that's one that we can lean on heavily when it comes to, the principles that should be embedded into this structure, but also specifically for any applications that we make.
Does that mean that only the councils can apply to this $20 million fund? Or the wider community like iwi and Hapu could too?
No, so that's a really good question, but it's not limited to councils.
Okay.
They do specifically mention councils because we are typically partnering with regional council on regional investments, but it's not limited to regional councils. So quite right, other entities could, put applications forward as well. The next one is that they talk about providing regional benefit. And I guess, regional benefit, there's some subjectivity in terms of how that could be interpreted. They do include, Eastern Bay of Plenty can be defined as a regional benefit, but I'm also, this is, I guess, where I restate that concern around gravity and the definition of region. So if you've got if you count that by the number of population that's impacted by a proposal, then you're having benefit that a stronger case is made for elsewhere. So we just want some flexibility in terms of how those criteria might be interpreted. So we'll be commenting on that to ensure we're in a strong position to put together an application for funding. And the last one, this is again, it's not specifically noted, but they do talk about timing gap and they do talk about immediate need. for the release of funds in this coming financial year, that would suggest they're looking for shovel-ready projects. If not, you'd just be waiting until the restructure of Quayside and the ongoing structure for regional benefit funding is available. So I would suspect they're looking for things that they can fund immediately, potentially cut ribbons on, I don't know. But, things that we realistically and genuinely can put money into in this next financial year. There's two exclusions there. One is not for wastewater projects, and we'll speak to that in a moment in regards to Matata wastewater project submission. And the second one, not offsetting things that we were intending to fund anyway. So it's not around providing a benefit to our rate take by funding things that are already in our budget.
Got a question from Councillor Boynton, then Councillor Isles.
Just saying about, because the clarifying about the fund being open to wider and then to potentially iwi as well. It seems like that there's an opportunity there where there's current projects that iwi have, where they're going to have substantial costs for infrastructure. Would there be an opportunity for council to work with them on their projects where that might help with their servicing costs for the services that council would normally provide? I don't know. I'm just thinking about how there's opportunity, rather than it be left to be in a competitive kind of nature where we've got joint projects at the moment, in a sense, that we could put forward that would meet the criteria but also benefit more than just ourselves. It's just a comment, sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Isles.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, would it be able to include an expansion on the Eastern Bay's public transport network, or is that really still under the auspices of NZTA?
Eastern Bay Public Transport, I think that's a regional council function.
It is,
So,
but primarily funded through NZTA, would that?
Yeah, I actually think rather than bundling that into this topic and regional benefit funding, we could include that as an additional consultation topic or feedback to regional council through our submission in terms of the general feedback under topic 4. I think there's a real flavour for public transport at the moment, particularly in this kind of fuel crisis environment that we're going into. So I think it's a very valid point. I think it could be outside of this funding.
And also just to look at the existing public transport operators within the Eastern Bay and to look at their funding levels and how can they expand to cover outlying areas like Mirapara, for example. And even with like the public transport, coastlands is also another area which is underutilised or under-serviced at this point in time. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. It's not a submission point we had thought about yet, so thank you. We can add that to our topic 4. Then our submission would move into, signalling what Whakatane District Council might be interested in putting forward. As I said, we don't really want to move into specific projects just yet.
No.
We don't want to predetermine a process that would have to go through to prioritise something. At the ELT level, we've discussed kind of themes of investment. I would expect we might want to put a candidate project forward, but would have to, as opposed to multiple ones. But that's something we'd have to step through. So as and when the fund's released in July, August, and we see criteria and we see a process associated with that, then we would come back to you and work through you to prioritise an application. So, topic 3, this is the one around Indigenous biodiversity. There's not really a whole lot to say about this one because there's no detail. The question really is, should regional council invest more, less or about the same in Indigenous biodiversity? The context is that Indigenous biodiversity in our region and nationally is in decline, that the investments that regional council do make are getting wins, and then there was a third one I've just lost. The third one, sorry, is that they're developing a biodiversity strategy at the moment, which looks to be finalised alongside the development of their long-term plan. So what they're looking at is that signal of intent, that sentiment from the region around, is this something we should be investing more into, given that context. The fourth part of context that I failed to mention was the RMA's position on Indigenous biodiversity is relatively weak. It talks about no net loss as opposed to enhancement or repair or improvement. So that's part of that context of wanting to potentially increase investment into that area. So in terms of a submission point, I think we might like to support in principle what is being proposed, which is an increase in biodiversity investment, but with the caveat that we need to see more detail. We don't know what that means in terms of what their focus is. We don't know what that means in terms of the cost implications for rates and debt. We don't know what the biodiversity strategy looks like or what that's going to focus on. We don't know what the opportunity cost is of, say, investing limited funding that we will all have under a rates capped environment into this versus into that. So, it's a great it's a great investment to make, but we just kind of need a bit more information.
Got a question from Councillor James.
Just what do they actually mean by Indigenous biodiversity? What's the difference between Indigenous and ordinary?
I'm not sure, but I guess the native plants and animals and the work they do in that space.
Native rather than exotic. So flora and fauna that were here prior to human settlement versus introduced species.
Well, I was seeing nods around the table, so...
Can I actually had my...
You'd like to comment?
Yep,
sure.
please. I think there's huge areas that we could attract some funding for. I noticed that a lot of the estuaries are salting up. You talk about a hiu and things like that, and maybe whether you want to add and do a thing on mangroves or whether you don't, and that would help that. I know in the Marata Lagoon that's starting to salt up, although we dig the siltation traps out every time we do that. We send the fines in and filling that up. And we could use that to build weirs up in the creeks and the hill to retain the banks, and I'm sure we could do that in lots of places around our district. And that would preserve it for future generations. So I think it's a great idea.
Yep, kia ora. Thank you, Councillor.
So yes, so I think, we generally support that. Councillor Hamill?
I'd just like to support Councillor Dennis on that. I think also our local regional councillors would be strong advocates of getting increased investment for the Eastern Bay. So there'll be... Walsh, when is the biodiversity strategy going to be completed or finished?
I'm not sure of the exact date, but the intention is to complete it in advance of the LTP so that they have a guiding strategy to inform their investment level and inform their investment focus. But the exact date, I don't know. Right, so topic 4 is the kind of general catch-all topic. Other policies that they have out for consultation is their fees and charges. We've had staff look at the fees and charges that relate to the area, and they're really inflationary in nature. There's really nothing to submit on there, is the staff's recommendation. The 2 areas that we might want to provide a submission on in this matter, well, actually 3 now that we're talking about public transport as well. That's the other one we would add. But one is the Matata wastewater project, and the other one is the general rates position and the impact on the Eastern Bay of Plenty. So firstly, the Matata wastewater project, there is a submission that will be forthcoming from the co-design group, and our submission, our council's submission, would seek to summarise and really reinforce and support that submission. So the key points of that submission were really that in the near future, that project will be seeking funding support from the Bay of Plenty Regional Council, that the level of funding support is reduced from kind of previous interest, because with the modular option that they're looking at now, the solution is looking at being more cost effective than previously. But also we're awaiting this policy. So you saw under the Regional Benefit Fund, they're not funding wastewater at the moment. They made that point because they're developing a policy that will guide how they support wastewater projects, because they've got interest from us, they've got also interest from others around the region. Unfortunately, that was also the reason given when we made a submission to their most recent LTP for funding, that they were developing this policy, so they couldn't commit just yet. They needed that policy to be developed. We're still awaiting that policy. So we're saying, give us some certainty around that policy, because we're going to come for funding soon. So that policy is also expected to be developed alongside the long-term plan, which means as part of that submission from the co-design group, they'll be wanting certainty around that policy, but they'll also want a commitment from Regional Council through, if not this annual plan, through the coming LTP in terms of partnership in that project.
Councillor Dennis.
Can I make a suggestion on that submission for Marata wastewater? I know that the Regional Council came unstuck with the Rotomā Rotoiti one, where the costs kept going up, and that they also came unstuck on the Tarawera one, where the costs kept going up. Could we just make it quite clear we're submitting on a certain figure, not a percentage? And that might encourage them to say it's got an end game rather than continuation.
Cool. Thank you, Councillor. I'll put that back to those leading the submission from the co-design group, and they can look to reflect that in their submission. And then the final matter was around the rates impact of the annual plan. So the Regional Council have managed to reduce their general rate from 8.2 to 4%, which is great, so we'd support that. But if you've seen the graphs in the consultation document, and this is not new, this has been ongoing for some time, the cost imposition of rates on our district and on Opotiki District too is quite substantially higher than other parts of the region. And so these are parts of the region that are, have greater wealth disparity and wealth challenges than other parts of the region. And so we have been commenting back for some time around needing to explore how we can, seek greater rating equity across the region, because, we are looking at twice the level of rates. That's driven by the river scheme targeted rate. But these things are all determined within revenue and financing policies, where there is sometimes flexibility or not flexibility in terms of how you rate for certain things. Do you use targeted rates? Do you see a general regional benefit of something and therefore use general rates? And so we'd be asking through your LTP, in which as part of that process you tend to review your revenue and financing policy, can you explore options for that particular rate and how that impacts our region?
So Boynton.
Just to clarify, so are you talking about how, for example, because our costs are higher, and that when it comes to our needs or the investment that's needed in our region, that a form of equitable rating would mean that possibly somewhere else in the bay they could have 4% and then we could possibly have 3%? Is that what you're meaning, or I'm just trying to understand?
Yeah, so at the moment my understanding is that the river schemes, and that's really what's driving the higher rate in our area, are 100% targeted rate funded. Other services that are delivered, you assess them as part of your revenue and financing policy and acknowledge whether they've got a regional good component to them or not. Things like biodiversity management, you could argue, well, that's to the benefit of everybody, therefore everybody should equally pay for that service. So I guess some of that assessment can be subjective. So it's about looking at how much of that service should be targeted rate funded versus potentially have a general rate element to it. And that would be explored through that revenue and financing policy review coming into the LTP. We haven't had traction on that in the past, but it's just something we continue to encourage, just because the outcome of that is the cost imposition and the higher rates on our area.
So I guess I'd just quickly put the question then. We've had a suggestion from Councillor Isles, but the key points there you've got is any other comments or policies of interest that we feel we should be adding to our submission. If I'm not expecting anything, but I just thought I better put the question just in case. Yeah.
Would they support Ngā Tapuai o Tui? I don't know. Thank you.
No, so we've got, that's great, but we appreciate the being given the opportunity to put forward anything. So we're on to our last slide, is that correct?
Just a finishing slide here. So thank you for your feedback today. We'll come back to you at Projects and Services Committee next week to approve a submission and provide a little bit more clarity around the hybrid model. There's hearings in April for this. There's not a date set for those, but just in April sometime they'll have hearings. We'll request to have a hearing and we can put that to the Mayor at some point, whether he wants to attend and, or a deputation of our elected members. And then beyond that, it's the next dates, the bottom three on that slide are around kind of future opportunities and future process. So should the Regional Benefit Fund be decided, then come July, August, we'll want to be ready. And we'll want to be ready with a spend-ready application. So that's one point. The second is that, I guess, circa March next year, LTP will be going through consultation, Regional Council's LTP. There's an opportunity again to reinforce our key points around things like matata wastewater, to look again at investment in regional biodiversity, to look again at where Quayside Holdings restructures landed and reinforce the principles and points that we made alongside other things that they might be consulting on through that process. And then I guess future again is post LTP is when that new Quayside structure and regional benefit fund looks to be established and then made available beyond that. So keeping our...
Excellent. Councillor Nick.
Yeah, thank you very much for stepping us through that, Walter. I'm glad that you were able to make it a bit simpler for us. My final question is the $20 million Regional Benefit Fund, that's a grant, it's not needing to be matched funding from council?
It's not. It doesn't say that it has to be match funded, but I would suggest that typically with these kinds of grants, we would want to have skin in the game. To have a good foot forward, we would have skin in the game on whatever we're suggesting or whatever we're applying for. Not necessarily 50-50, but yeah.
Is it a bullet point with our submission to indicate preference not to have matched funding?
What's everyone's thoughts?
Well, if we're going to put forward some ready ideas that are shovel-ready, in my opinion, doesn't seem like we've got any extra fat in our current budget if we have to match it. Well, even just with the riverfront thing, we still haven't made a decision about, money that we've got on the LTP now, how that should be spent.
Yep, I think it's a valid point, especially given at that point, once we're at that stage of making an application, our annual plan's locked in as well, right? So, we're locked into our budgets and the contributions we're going to make to projects. So certainly we could acknowledge that, we'll have skin in the game with an application, but that match funding's not necessarily the best way forward. Yeah.
Thanks.
I think we had one final comment, Steve. Were you wanting to? Oh, no, sorry, it must have been in relation to that one. Well, we're 1 minute before our time, so thank you very much for your great time management there, and thank you very much for your presentation, and we appreciate it given the fact that you weren't the technical expert on that subject, so we appreciate that you've given it your all with that, and we look forward to getting the submission document next week.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and we will resume back at 10:50. Right. It's 10:50. We'll make a start. Welcome, Sarah and Sarah. Has everybody managed to find the slides? We'll take that as a yes. So we're in your hands, ladies.
Okay. Morning, Chair and councillors. Today we're here to talk to you about fees and charges for 2026-27. So the strategy team has been carrying out our annual review of fees and charges. And as part of this review process, we've identified a number of proposed changes to our fees and charges that we'd like to work through with you today. So we have about 2 hours set aside for this session, which seems rather long, so hopefully we won't need it all. But in that time, we would like to discuss with you the 28 proposed new changes, and also the 32 changes that are proposed as increases that are up above the inflation rate. To help us do that, we'll be asking staff across the business to come and speak to some of their fees and charges that are proposed, changes that are proposed. And when they're unable to be able to do that, we will step in and speak through those for you. So unless there are any questions, I'll hand over to Sarah Ellis, and she's going to take us through what are fees and charges, how we set them, and what are some of the principles behind those.
Lovely, thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Sorry, I'll just get myself set up.
You're happy to take questions through the presentation as needed? Lovely.
Yes, that's fine. So this slide here, what are fees and charges? So user fees and charges are one of the ways in which council can pass on some costs directly to those who use our services and facilities. So how much council tries to recover from fees and charges is defined in our revenue and financing policy, and I'll go into that in a little more detail in the following slides. But these are some of the examples here on the slide of what services we do charge for. So why we use fees and charges. So user fees and charges are one of the ways that council can recover some of the costs of delivering an activity or a service directly from those who use and therefore benefit from the activity or service. Council sets fees and charges to share the costs between ratepayers and the people using that service. There is no perfect balance between the two, but generally where an activity has greater public good, such as our libraries or parks, a higher proportion of that activity will be funded by general rates, and those that have a greater private benefit, such as building and resource consents, will have less rates funding. So this next slide here is the principles that guide our fees and charges. As our policy notes, there are some inherent conflicts between these guiding principles, and in practice, setting user fees and charges involves balancing these competing guiding principles. So I won't read them out, but they're there for you to review. So in terms of our revenue and where fees and charges sits, so for the annual plan moving into next year, it's anticipated 7.8% will be recovered through fees and charges, and as you can see, rates there sits at 71.5%.
Morning, ladies. Hi,
Morning.
Sarah. What is it currently? What percent is our fees and charges currently?
We can come back to you. Sorry, I don't have Paul here unless...
In terms
I just wanted to know, is it going up to 2% overall or something like that?
Yeah, we can check and come back to you.
Okay. Steve?
Sorry, can I just check that question? What is our fees and charges?
Well, this is what the percentage of our fees and charges will contribute to our revenue for the coming year.
Yeah, okay.
What is it at the moment?
At the moment,
like, is it like 7.2 or?
Yep.
It says 27%.
I just wanted to make a comment that I was quite surprised when I saw this. 7.8% is very low. for a share of your full revenue for a council. Paul and I were having a chat about that, and we did want to raise that with councillors to have a think about that as we go through this process. I mean, in my mind, it should probably sit somewhere between 12 and 15% of your revenue comes from fees and charges. But yeah, just want you to sort of keep that in the back of your mind as we work through today's workshop.
Also, to clarify, that heading should actually be 25, 26, so those are our current.
Well, they are our current.
So that's our
Yeah,
current.
so that's my mistake, sorry about that.
Councillor Isles.
Yeah, just referencing back to Councillor Remick's question, do we have or is there a generalisation amongst councils of a similar size to ours as to what their level of fees and charges percentage would be?
Look, actually, I think we might do a little bit of work on that. I just know the councils I've been in have been in that sort of range, but also there was an article before Christmas, I think it was Whanganui Council or somewhere like that, was proposing to get their rates, fees and charges up at around 20% in order to deal with the rates capping that's coming up. So so rates aren't going up, but instead fees and charges are going up. And that's the important thing to consider. If your fees and charges are dropping as a share of revenue over time, the only other place you're really getting that is from rates. So you're just pushing that cost onto the rates number. Whereas if you're pulling your fees and charges up, then you're able to reduce the increases to the overall rates.
But I guess...
Actually, we might just do a little bit of benchmarking and see what other councils are at.
I guess also, though, you've got to take into consideration, if that gets excessive, that it's going to impact the amenities or facilities that we operate. And a good example would be swimming pool, for example. Would that be then under-patronised or what have you? So you have to keep it in context, I guess, but also bearing in mind the rate capping that's coming in. So, yeah, it's a double-edged sword, really, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's a load of high continuum, and the job of councillors is to consider where's the point on that. It's not too high, but it's also not too low.
Jim, did you want to say something?
Just a clarification on that 7.8. Some councils include their water and trade waste in there. We haven't got it in ours because, as we know, the water's charged as a rate. But if you include water in there and the trade waste, you know that figure will increase. Yeah.
Yeah, good point.
So the review that we've undertaken and brought to you today has been done within the bandings of our existing revenue and financing policy. So everything presented to you today still sits within these bands that were set out at the last long-term plan. Just to let you all know, this is a mandatory policy that Council has, and we will need to review and adopt a new policy at the next LTP. So just to keep that in mind as well. So.
I just had a comment on this slide when I saw it as well. Something I probably... We tried to do it in the last LTP, and I wouldn't mind raising the conversation again whether or not council thinks it's time to start tightening up these bands. Other councils I've been in have had an approach where they've sort of said at this level, plus or minus, so then a bit of a tolerance of sort of like 5% or something like that, or 10%. Those are quite wide bands. So yeah, I wouldn't mind testing that. And another conversation I'm quite keen to have as part of the revenue and financing policy during the long-term plan is whether or not some of them should be set at 100% fees and charges funded. So they're our cost recovery activity as opposed to being subsidised by rates. Does anyone have any sort of instant reactions or thoughts to that?
Just had Councillor Dennis first and then Councillor Mick.
Stunned, Mr. Chief Executive. Actually, I just wanted to talk about that water supply one. It talks about potential to use, but aren't we already charging water rates in town?
Yeah, so those are for connections, so the potential to use. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you.
Go through that section and those changes. Thank you for the question.
Councillor Mick.
Yeah, I think we should be tightening up the bands, but if I have a look at that, what's up on the slide, and I relate it to our sundry accounts receivable as at 31st of December 25, when you look at some of the non-rates debtors that we've got in there, some of them are quite high already, and picking up on Councillor Isles' point is that if we adjust some of the fees and charges for some of the community services, does that mean this less people will go and will get less money anyway? So I don't know how we test that balance of what's fair and what's recoverable, but I do agree from a practical point of view we need to be looking at more cost recovery, sadly.
Or user pays, I guess, isn't it? Yeah. Councillor Boynton.
I mean, part of me feels like it's really mean. I mean, particularly with what people are facing currently at the moment, with the worst cost of living crisis, and also the fuel crisis at the moment. And yes, I know the council needs to look after itself, but our main aim is to ensure that we look after our whole community, so that we still have a council. But yeah, I think there really does need to be a balance. There also does need to, we do need to look at that research. I've just brought up financial strategies adopted by councils and impact on rates and debts, and how other councils, it's a study on how councils have managed and balanced their fees and charges. And you know how they determine their rate. However, this was done before all of these things have come into place, and I'm also sure that LGNZ also would have looked at and have some research around this as well. They may also be able to gauge what is actually happening currently around the motu from what current councils may be looking towards with the rates capping coming up ahead. So that's more up-to-date information and the indications that they're receiving from councils of their membership. Thank you.
Right, I don't see any other comments, so please proceed.
So this slide here is just the proposed timeline for review. So staff began reviewing our current fees and charges schedule back in December. We brought this through to management review and now through to council briefing today. So this briefing is really highlighting the proposed changes that sit outside of inflationary change. So from here, we would take this through a finalised schedule to the 16th of April council meeting to go out for consultation and seek that public consultation and feedback. And then at the end of June, alongside the annual plan, you would adopt the fees and charges schedule at that point in time. So there's no decisions today. This is the process that we will follow from here.
Sorry. Question? Oh, sorry, Councillor.
Thank you. Can I just check when we last had our a significant fees and charges increase other than inflationary?
Yes, I can speak to that. During the LTP, we had quite an extensive change in some of the proposed fees and charges, and particularly there were a couple of areas where the increases were dramatic, such as the sports fields. And so there was quite an extensive public consultation process and a hearings process. So that would have been, I think, in December 23 from memory.
Okay.
And just to add to, a bit more context to the background of that, the fees and charges hadn't had a significant review, or even in some cases, in a number of cases, inflationary adjustments for up to 10 years. And a number of them were actually falling below the low point of the threshold for the revenue and financing policy. So that movement was a bit of a shift to actually bring fees and charges in alignment where they probably should be. But of course, people were used to actually paying quite low amounts for some things where they probably should have been paying higher amounts.
There was one other significant example, which was the airport landing fees. They had been waived since 2016, but this council, the previous council chose to reinstate those landing fees through the LTP.
Okay, so the next section, we will take through the summary of proposed changes. So, as you can see here, the majority of fees and charges will have an inflationary adjustment, and that is shown by the table there, so the bill rates. So BIRL stands for Business and Economic Research Limited, and they are an independent New Zealand economics consultancy that provide analysis and forecasting for local government. And so they have their own set of cost adjusters that are specifically designed for local government, and that's why council uses the BIRL inflation rates. So we won't be discussing all of those today. That will come to you at the April council meeting. What we want the briefing, or what we're bringing the briefing to you today, is to focus on the exceptions. So these are the three listed here. So there's been a significant revision to the three waters fees and charges, and Jim Finlay will take you through this. The new fees, so this is where there is a new service or a charge that could be charged to have cost recovery, and then increased fees where the cost to deliver that service has increased beyond inflation. So I will invite Jim. There he is. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Yes. So there are changes that we've made to the fees and charges for water, and these are driven by these factors you can see up there, which is this local water done well ring fencing requirements, where we've got to be able to show the Department of Internal Affairs in particular that what we charge for is exactly what we provide for that thing. Like you can't, say a little bit of sewerage has been subsidising water or something like that. And the other thing there is that, so that's the actual cost, and then of course council a couple of years ago decided to update our backflow prevention system. So that's to stop water getting back in. When there's low pressure, you can actually pull water out of properties back into the line. So we have three levels of backflow preventers. One is your one around town where it's low hazard. There's a medium hazard where it might be out on the plain, someone's got like a trough or two. And then there's the big hazard, which is like the milking shed or something like that. So that has to have a above ground testable backflow preventer. So just going back to that earlier discussion, now the fees and charges for water, wastewater, stormwater and trade waste are for the actual connections. They are not inclusive of the income for those services. So just going on my own water bill and the cost of water in Whakatane, I would be paying about $750 odd a year without GST, and with the 18,500 houses, and I'm pretty average in the sense that my wife and I are the only ones in the house and most of the time, and we work. If you took me as the average for the town and a Hopi, there would be $13.4 million coming in for the fact that we charge $2.44 plus GST. So that gives you an idea. And then just going on what Chief Executive mentioned about, looking to increase, it's not a fees and charges issue, but some countries, for example, in the Netherlands at the moment, it's $14.80 a cubic metre for water. Wakatani, $2.44. Out on the plains, 77 cents plus GST. Our plains water supply would far be much more income than Wakatani. We've got one or two customers who are spending like 30,000, 40,000 a year on the water through the meter. There's a fixed charge plus there's that water through the meter. So again, sorry, I just thought I'd clarify that because, you can see there's bigger numbers out there. So it's very small print, sorry, in this, but essentially we've given all the different types of connections there, how much it would cost to connect up. So these are for someone who, say, has subdivided a piece of land off the farm and decides they want to put a new water connection into the house there. They'd look up there and they'd say, oh, we're medium hazard because we've got, one horse and we want a trough outside. So they'd see their cost there. But someone in town wanted a connection, there's the standard connection, you'll see there's a lower price for that. And that's based on the cost of materials. We've taken the cost of what it takes the serviceman to do them and then, added up mileage and some admin costs for the office as well for filing the record on the property file, etc.
So, excuse me, Jim, so where did the actual cost hit for those before? Because you've got nothing under for the top four, nothing for 25, 26.
Mm-hmm.
So where would that cost for those services have actually gone against? General rate or?
No, they would have had a charge. They would have been in one of the other areas there. So, yeah. Sorry, which slide are you looking at?
So there's nothing for 1.1.2 and the first four of 1.1.1, there's like a dash against those costs because we must have been doing that already. So I'm just wondering where the cost would have been, what it would have been against.
I think it's because they didn't have...
not separated out.
They did different categories, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So whereas they only had two categories in 25, 26, I think with the new regulations, there's an increase
So
to
more
the
categories.
different number of categories. So therefore, there's different amounts of charges in that 26, 27 year.
Thanks, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So in the future, we would have it year on year, you'll see there's that 2% increase, if that's what it is. Okay.
I think that's about it, isn't it? Oh, and there was a question.
Dennis has a question, sorry?
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, Jim, if you can finish if you want.
Oh, no, we had a couple of questions about why are we reducing the backflow preventer testing. So when the council decided to go with the backflow prevention program, all the properties getting their backflow devices upgraded or new, in some cases because they were missed out the first time round, the council said that will be, would be picked up as a capital project, so, it's funded by a loan, but required under the drinking water standards, those devices have to be tested annually, and we had a figure in there of, I think it was $215. That was based on going out and doing one, but what we're going to do when we start the charging regime, we will have a contractor who will go out and say do 20 in a day. So the prices come down. That's why that's a lesser price for that. So it'll be done in series rather than one-offs. Yeah. Sorry.
Councillor Boynton?
So when we went out and the public,
Sorry, Gavin, did you not finish your one?
No, I hadn't actually asked a question. But thank you, Jim. The implementation of your backflow prevention policy, I was going to ask that question. So you're saying that that's just to pick up the regular testing, that's why there'll be fees come on that?
Sorry, is it the echo in the thing?
So what you're just talking about, the backflow prevention policy, that when it talks on page 12, that was just the bottom line. That's just to actually start that whole testing regime. That's what we're going to do, Sophie. Okay, thank you. The second question I want to ask is, we talked about on page 15 the water filling stations. We're going to introduce a fee for that. Is that to actually test them and make sure they're up to quality?
No. What we've got there,
Page 15. 13.3 A and B, it talks about annual permit to draw water from a willing water filling station plus usage charge per council's water rate.
So at the moment, say Waitahi want to take some water from the hydrant to spray on the stopping Edgecombe, they come in and they borrow a standpipe.
Sorry, Jim, could you please put your microphone on?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, so at the moment, if a contractor such as Waitahi come in and want to take water by bulk, and they do it out of our reticulation, we lend them a hydrant, and it's calibrated, and we check it every year. So when they go and put it in, we've got the start reading and the end reading, and then we invoice them. What these automatic billing stations do, and this is really being pushed again by the drinking water standards, because every time someone opens up a hydrant, they've got a potentiality for contaminating the water. So what's been pushed by the industry is to put special stations in, and prior to that, you have to have people who've got the authority to get the water because they've got the proper equipment and they've got the proper standards that they've signed up to. So we will charge them an annual permit, and we've got one of them's going into Edgecombe at the moment. There's a couple else, another one in the back of town at Tahi Street, and that automatically they have to swipe a card, and then they automatically get billed for that use of water. But that money there is, so they'll be paying the $2.44 in town, or whatever it is on the plains. But that amount of money there is the permit, so we've got them logged into our system, and we've got their bank account number and all that sort of thing.
Sorry about that. Apologies. Councillor Boynton.
Now I started reading other things and I'm trying to remember what my question was. I actually was just wanting to, it was just around when we introduced the backflow policy and to the public, and those things happened. Was there room in the policy where they were notified that they're going to receive additional charges? Because if we're introducing a new charge that is to do with, because the new rules have come in to say they must be tested now, is there a process where they've been notified that they're going to be given that charge now? New charge?
Yes, when the policy was decided by council, that was made clear that the council decided they weren't going to absorb the testing charges, so they have to be put back on the consumer. So we're looking to start charging. Start testing after next year, because we'll be then finished, and then we've got programs for of the batches. So we've got a lot of time to tell them further about that. But they were told about it in the initial information that went out.
This question it might be slightly different, but with all the users and the different charges, and I might need help with this just to understand, but if we have water bottling companies that are taking a lot of water, do we charge them on the rate or the amount of volume that they are taking?
At the moment, we don't have any bottling plants that are on our water supply. They've got their own, the ones out on the plains. So they pay a regional council rate for the consent. But they, as far as I know, they don't pay anybody for their volume. If they were hooked into our system, we would be having a meter on it for sure. Yeah.
Right, no more questions, please. Please keep going.
So those slides there, so they highlighted all of the new charges and how that section would be redrafted. So it will look quite different to the existing fees and charges schedule. So this is the last part on waters. So if there's any more questions, I just want to make sure they've been covered before Jim goes.
Councillor Hamel, then Councillor Emick.
It's not specific to waters, but just because it's popped up here on the travel charge, and we've got $1.26, which is probably the recommended IRD rate at the moment. That might change presumably when as petrol prices go up, but also just a comment on most of our fleet diesel for that sort of thing, or have we got some electric vehicles because they've got a reduced mileage rate?
Yeah. That's with a contractor, I believe.
We don't have any electrical vehicles out for these people who do the installations at the moment. We've trialled a electric truck, but the size of the batteries in it means their tool gear that they carry at the moment won't fit properly, and as soon as you hook on a trailer, you can't get very far down the road. So there's a bit of an issue there, but yeah. Because we've been asked by our central management to look at our business plan moving forward with petrol increases. At the moment, we're just trying to be very, like we'll try and say, like if there's one at Matatā and then there's one over in Hopi, if the guy's going over to Hopi to do something else, he'll do that connection. And if someone's doing something else at Matatā, he'll do that connection. So you're trying to, do those sort of things to cut down the number of trips.
Councillor Mick.
Oh, yeah, thanks. I don't know if I'm just being dopey or not, but why have we got decreases? Like, they're only a matter of dollars, why are we not gone the opposite and increased it by a few more?
Because of this ring fencing thing, we have to be able to prove exactly how we've worked everything out. And so, it is what it is. And I could say that, it was probably 10, 15 years ago when the first fees and charge review was done, and then it's just been incremental increases each year. And sometimes when you do those increases, you're a little bit above where you should be, and sometimes you're a little bit below. Well, because we've gone back to base one to make this, to get the accurate figure so that if we are audited, we can say, it's based on this length of mileage, this much running cost, this many hours of a man doing the job, etc., etc.
Oh, thank you. It's a good shame, I guess.
Oh, I don't see any more questions. So that's it for the water.
Thank you. So moving into the summary of the new fees and charges proposed. So there are 28 to go through, so they have their own slides for each activity, and we will bring the activity managers to address any questions. So we have, I can see Annalise is online. So there are 4 new charges that have been proposed for roading that are here, so I will open to any questions on this.
Okay, so we've got, did somebody would like to maybe summarise it a little bit for us?
So these new charges are being proposed due to the volume of applications we are receiving for urgent and late corridor access, which has a flow-on effect in terms of resourcing and processing these. So these are there to recover that cost. And in terms of the road damage, so that's for the first 2, I should say, and the third one there for the road damage bond. That is, we previously had a bond, and these can be introduced with a building consent or resource consent as a part of those conditions. So that's been proposed to be brought back in, and also the road naming and renaming application fee. So that was in the policy that costs would be borne by the applicant, but it's not stipulated in our charges schedule, so proposing to bring that in.
Thank you. So did we have a set fee for the road naming and renaming application fee? Because it's saying actual cost now, so did we prior to that have a set fee?
No, there was, oh, sorry, Annie, you go.
Welcome,
I was just
Annie.
going to answer if you wanted me to. Good morning, everyone. No, the policy just states actual costs because they can vary so much.
Oh, okay. So no change then?
No, just it wasn't actually stipulated in the fees and charges. It was stipulated in the policy. So it's just making it clear in the fees and charges schedule as well.
Lovely, thank you. That makes more sense. I've got Councillor Dennis and Councillor Emmett.
Thank you. Just in regard to 7.2.9, the urgent lake corridor access, something like that, I take it that isn't about road closure for weather damage, or does that apply to road closure for urgent sealing from some contractor, or no? What does that entail?
Through the chair, so no, it's not for like emergency works. This is more, we're just getting increasing amounts of applicants not putting in applications when they should, and then, you know, it could be for a high profile event or something like that, and so it requires the team to kind of just drop everything and focus on processing that application when there is actually quite strict specified timeframes on what those applications should take. So it's 5 days for minor works and 15 working days for major works. So this is just to help recover those costs when those applications aren't put in at the appropriate time.
Thank you.
But not for emergency works.
Thank you. Councillor Emmett.
No, that's fine. My question's been answered. Thanks, Annie.
Wonderful. Thanks, Annie. Councillor Boynton.
So does that apply to council run events as well? Because I know that I've been contacted to get information on traffic management details for something to do with council. Will they be charged the 500?
So yeah, through the chair. So this is only when the normal timeframes can't be met, and the team are having to process things urgently, or they've been late. So when applications are put in on time, this fee won't apply. In terms of internal council departments, yes, the way it's specified in the Utilities Act is kind of similar to how Three Waters is being separated out. Because council acts as both the road controlling authority and in some cases the applicant, we have to treat ourselves the same as we do any other person, utility operator working within the road corridor. So those internal departments will incur the same fees and charges for any corridor access or traffic management plan processes.
And how will this be communicated to the community so that they are aware of this now, seen as this is a new charge that's been introduced? Because there are many community groups and events that are sort of regular things, and they may be used to a certain time frame, and then end up being hit with the $500.
So through the chair, so yeah, it's only for when they come in late. The introduction of the late fee is new, but the timeframes are not new. They're the same as they have always been for a number of years. In terms of these new charges being communicated, I believe that's going to be through the public consultation session that will go following this. And, you know, we're not going to try and make things difficult. This is more, in some cases, we're getting repeated applicants putting things in late, expecting us to drop everything and process those applications, and there is a cost implication to that. So this will help recover those costs and hopefully also encourage applicants to put things in on time.
Thank you.
All right, I'm not seeing any more questions, and we'll better keep it moving since we've got 28. So thank you very much, Annalise, and we bring Mike to the table, is it, with our ports? Mark, sorry, Mark. Gosh. Sorry, Mark.
Kia ora. I've been called worse, so don't worry about it.
We had a mic years ago, and I don't know why, I just set it, yeah.
I guess I'll just start by giving you a little bit of an overview and a bit of background, and then we can sort of chew through each proposed new fee. As part of this process, I was quite interested to hear the comments made by Sarah in the preamble, and then following on by Stephen, because what I realised through that corridor was that at the moment our current cost recovery in the port space is around about 11.7%, which sits a little bit above those figures mentioned earlier, which is promising. However, if we look at the national averages, which I have and our team has, for small provincial ports with a mix of commercial and private activity, the actual band of cost recovery sits somewhere between 30 and 70%. So that coincidentally aligns with the correction that's been made in our revenue policy. So that's just a little bit of an FYI, really. And those figures, those national figures, include cost recovery from boat ramps. So that's a fairly significant point to remember. 8.32, which is the fee for unauthorised berthage, where most of these fees and charges are either maintaining or increasing revenue. This is not that. This is really a deterrent, and we're trying to encourage different behaviour. And the reason for that is we have vessels that berth on loading zones, including refuelling zones, and empty zones we keep clear to access the fueling zones, and they berth on there occasionally without permission, and that causes a significant nuisance to other users. Through the bylaw review process which we're going through, it was made quite clear, the legal opinion was that we can't infringe our bylaws in many cases, so the recommendation was that we needed to introduce a bylaw breach fee, which basically if somebody parks where they're not to, we can issue them with a fee as a deterrent to move them or encourage them to not do that, in conjunction with significant signage. So this fee, that's exactly what this fee is designed to do. It's double. We have a current casual day berthing fee, and this fee is set at twice that amount. It's not a huge problem, but we don't have it daily or anything like that, but when it does happen, it does cause a significant nuisance, so we might only use it 2, 3, 4 times a year.
Yes, certainly.
Morning, Mark.
Morning.
When I look at our sundry accounts where it looks at moorings and berthage fees, and I'm looking at an end of year, it seems like there is always between 35 to 45,000 worth of mooring and berthage fees that we're not being able to recover. Putting in this new fee, is that going to help us recover any more?
Our actual recovery rate as of last year is very high. In fact, off the top of my head, I can't think of any unrecovered berthage fee.
Oh, well, okay.
Yeah.
You may be referring to a timing matter in the
I'm
rates
looking at the
details.
30th of June, and then I had a look at the 30th of December.
Yeah, but,
Yeah, so I was looking at across the year, whether it's another type of fee.
No, well, the explanation, if you look at it, the annual cost recovery on berths, our recovery rate is, I'm going to say 100%. However, we do have, if you look at quarters, we do have some users that slide from one quarter to another, so notoriously slow payers, so that, if you captured information at Q2, you could come up with that kind of figure, but yeah, on an annual basis, our cost recovery on berths is very high.
And I guess actually this is not reflective of whether it's been a cost recovery, which is what you're talking about. I'm talking about other outstanding stuff that might go into that category. Okay. Thanks.
Councillor James?
Yeah, I believe though that some of this lost cost recovery has actually come from council not invoicing the vessels or the berthage, the people using the berths. Has that practice changed now? Because that has been a common comment from quite a few that they just simply don't, some of them go back 2-3 years. That all changed
Not in the
now?
last, not in the last 2 or 3 years that hasn't happened.
Okay,
Yep.
thanks.
Yep. That was the case.
It was?
It was, yep.
Okay, thanks.
But all our licences to occupy are current, and I'm going to say everybody's current in terms of paying, but there's always some sort of flex in that. Yep.
No, thanks for that, mate.
All right, did you want to cover off the boat ramps?
Yep. So why are we proposing fees on boat ramps? So there are a couple of amendments to the slides that you have, which, if you appreciate, there's been constant peer reviews going on through this. So if you just bear with me, I'll change some of those as we go through it. But it's primarily aimed at out-of-town users that use our facilities, and we're aiming to ask them to contribute to the upkeep of our boat ramps. So at the moment, that burden is, as we spoke about earlier, is shared between current users and the ratepayer. The system that we're proposing, and we've done quite a bit of work on this, is developed and implemented by a company called Stella, and at this stage they're our preferred supplier. It's a simple they have pay for parking solutions across many organisations, including other councils and hospitals, tourism sites such as Milford Sounds, and of course other boat ramps, particularly on the Coromandel. It uses simple number plate recognition technology, and users of the boat ramp can either pay a day pass, which is termed scan to pay, and they just use that by, it's a simple QR code, and they just put in their vehicle registration number, and then they ask for payment details and they can go fishing. This is where we're trying to target locals or residents of the Whakatane district, is we think it's appropriate that there's a small admin fee that is targeted at residents only. It's largely a self-service portal, so they go into the portal, they register their own details, and then they upload proof of residency. The change to the slide that you've got is that $20 admin fee is a one-off cost, not per annum. So once we've captured that data, there's no further need to monitor it. The $20 cost, however, does cover some random checking of that data. So part of the data is, part of the registration is they upload proof of their residency, so we can just go through, do a random check to make sure that they haven't uploaded their pack and save invoice or something like that. And also it helps us if people have trouble loading the information onto the self-serve portal. We have our admin team on hand to be able to assist them with that. So that's what the admin fee covers on the V permit.
Can I just ask, Mark, what is the cost of actually maintaining the boat ramp that's currently, I take it, on the general ratepayer?
I can't give you an exact cost on that because maintaining the boat ramp includes OPEX and significant amount of cleaning. As we know, we have to keep all the wood and stuff off the ramps, and it includes Thornton, Whakatane and Ohiwa. I actually haven't pulled the numbers out. It'd be pretty hard to kind of do that, but it is significant. It's every day we are maintaining the ramps. And so that's the V permit, and then the other option is the scan to pay, and there's another small suggested change here. So as I mentioned earlier, that's there's no pre-registration required. Users turn up, scan the QR code, load their details and their payment details, and then go fishing. What we're proposing here is because we have considerable congestion in Whakatane, both on the roads and at the ramp, is that we reduce the scan to pay fee for Thornton and Ohiwa to $10. And because Thornton and Ohiwa capturing that data to run the feasibility work, we didn't include those numbers anyway. And we considered that to be an insurance policy to make sure that our numbers were conservative and made sense. So to charge a lesser number for those two ramps is very doable and a recommendation. So that's it in a nutshell. I'm open to questions.
Councillor Mick.
So at the moment, there is no parking or putting your boat in the water fee when people go to the wharf?
No.
Okay, and which is why there's going to be some public interest in this?
Yeah.
And you're talking about a little bit like the boat wash, that people can just drive and scan, and then the water starts. They're going to drive past a post with a scanning thing on, and they would have had registered.
Yeah, so if you're if you're not a resident, the signage is very, there's a lot of signage. So yeah, it's simply you scan the QR code, you're asked to put your registration of your vehicle in there and your payment details, and then that's it. If you're a resident, then there's nothing to do. Once you've done that registration, just do it once, because the technology will snap you get 2 vehicle registrations on your application, and so the technology will just recognise you as what we call a whitelister, and there'll be no further actions required.
Okay. And will the fees collected go back into the harbour fund, or go back into the operational accounts for this category code?
I would have to get clarification from our CFO on that, but I would have thought it would just come in as a revenue source in our normal.
Thanks.
Councillor James.
You're just going
Tony, did you have a question?
on the 2 vehicle permits.
Yep.
Would the $20, would you have to pay another $20 every time you upgraded your vehicle, or?
No, all that means is that at any one time 2 vehicles can be current. So if you sold your vehicle and you contacted our administrator, actually that's incorrect. You can make that change on your own through the self-service portal at no cost.
Okay.
Yeah, that's just a change in details.
The other question that I had was, I agree that I've thought for a while that we probably need to be charging down there. It's probably going to go against the grain with a lot of people, but what are other boat ramps? I mean, it's not uncommon around the country now. What are other boat ramps charging?
Yeah, it's pretty varied. It's a good question. It ranges anywhere from nothing, right, and when they start charging, it starts kind of at about $5 and it caps out at about $35 a day. Yeah, and it's evolving and becoming far more popular, as you can imagine. Yeah.
$35 might cause a bit of discussion.
Yeah.
I can say from personal experience, Sanspit charge $13.50 for when you put your boat in, and another $13.50 when you take it out.
Right, okay, we've got quite a few more slides. Any more questions of Mark? If not, we'll move on to Dog. Sorry, Councillor Boynton, you had a quick question.
How much does it cost, the cost of? It was just inquiring about the cost of administrating the scan and pay. That's all covered in the recovery of these charges? that right?
Yeah, that's right. Once that's up and running, that's kind of an automatic function, really, and that's taken care of by the provider. Yeah, so the only input we have is for the residency setup. Yeah, so that the V permit.
Councillor Emmett?
Yeah, just the last comment. I like the idea that we've got the innovation going. Perhaps when it gets further down the line to the consultation, if just a fact sheet can have for councillors, just with FAQ, who else is doing it around the country, what's their price range. And I think the fact that we've got the boat wash there already on a scan system is probably going to help that get adjusted in people's minds, that it's perhaps not as much as a bigger deal as they might think it would be.
I think that's really important around the comms, the way we comms this, because it's going to be a pretty divisive kind of conversation. So, yeah, we need to put a lot of work and thought into that.
Okay, thanks.
Agreed.
Councillor Hamill?
Thank you, Mark. Can I just clarify Councillor Boynton's question, the scan to pay technology, is that an ongoing charge every year, or is it a one-off for that technology that we're paying as a council?
Do we have a contract with them?
No, not yet. It's been through our procurement team to make sure that we're compliant and the requirements around setting up a short form agreement if we decide to do that. But because we haven't had approval from council to progress it, we've stopped those conversations at that point. But there's no, just to make sure we're on the same page, the only cost is for the admin fee for the V permits, which is locals, and any other costs, including maintenance of materials or cameras or any other maintenance costs throughout the life of that hardware, is covered by the provider.
Sorry. Just with that, is there anything to do with the gathering of that information that ends up staying with the provider, is that right?
Our discussion hasn't gone that far yet.
Okay.
Are you talking about privacy concerns?
Yes.
Yeah, we definitely. They're pretty well versed across a whole bunch of councils, so we can definitely make sure that box is ticked when we have ongoing conversations with them.
Thank you.
Right, I'm going to call it to close after Wilson's question because we've got another 24 activities to go.
No, just going back on that vehicle recognition and 2 vehicles. So people would have the ability, sort of like the toll road over at the Eastern Link, where if you're in a different vehicle today and that you can just change it.
Yes,
for today.
correct. Yep.
But, yeah, that would happen.
That's going to happen.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Yep.
Right, thank you very much,
Okay.
Mark. Any
Kia ora.
other
Thank
burning
you.
questions, feel free to email Mark. Yeah, or alternatively Mike. Right, we'll welcome Nancy to the table. And
Through the chair, is it okay if I have Mike McKenzie speak to this?
I was going to say Mike, but I was almost too scared.
Thank you.
Welcome, Mike and Nancy.
Thank you. So there's 2 new charges that we propose. The first one is for working dogs. At the moment, if you have a working dog, you pay $68.50, which is the same as an early bird rate for anyone else. And the only advantage you get is you can keep your dog whole. You're not paying the whole dog fee. The aim of this, because it correlates with a change in the definition of the working dog, which we're going to bring into our dog policy, and that'll include hunting dogs, which I've heard at these meetings for the last 6 months been brought up. And I'll give you the definition that we're thinking of bringing in, if I can find it. But basically, a hunting dog is a dog that is used for lawful hunting, and it also must have a current avian aversion training certificate, and then you'll get to register your dogs for $40. We came up with the $40 fee because I've spoken to a few hunting clubs, pig hunting clubs and that, and
there has to be incentive to come and register these dogs, because at the moment, they're not registered, and we know this. And farm dogs are not registered, we know this. So it's a plan to try and actually get these dogs registered, so when we do have issues, which we do now and again, we can identify the dogs. And the $40 fee seemed reasonable. So the whole idea, and it's also working in with the Kiwi Trust, they're all over this as well. We sort of get two birds with one stone. We get all our pig dogs and hurling dogs registered, and they get Kiwi aversion training at the same time.
Councillor Boynton.
I was just going to ask about that, but also too for those who might get caught out because they're not really aware of it because it's a new type of thing. Would they get like an amnesty kind of thing where they can get, instead of having to get the full fine, that they are then enrolled, that they must do the Kiwi aversion course? Because especially if they're not aware and then they end up in trouble because their dog hasn't had the training.
Okay, so most hunters these days, like say for instance the Taumata Hunting Club, they'll have a day where the Kiwi Trust comes along and does all their dogs. And I've been to them, and there'll be a line of 50 trucks, and I know none of those dogs are registered, but they're Kiwi averted trained. So hunters are quite good at getting it done. What we're proposing to do, probably June, once this is all settled, we're actually going to go out into the community with the Kiwi Trust, with the Council Dog Control, and they can come to us, get the dog Kiwi averted, and register at the same time. And we're going to go out to the outer areas to do that. So this will be for next year's registration, and there'll be plenty of comms about it.
And just because I know that there's a lot of our whānau who obviously rely on that as part of their food supply, and they're not necessarily registered with clubs. That's not usually something that they do, that they are joined to a hunting club.
Yep.
The thing is that the dog is a working dog that they use to be able to get kai. So do they have to be part of a club?
No, not at all. No. Sorry, that was just an example of a number of dogs. No, definitely not. No. The idea is that they come along to these days we're going to have, and they can get the dog trained and get the cheaper fee at the same time. I just think it's a real incentive at $40 as opposed to $70, because these guys have got 4 or 5 dogs. So, yeah.
Councillor Isles.
I admire the approach, but I don't see that working. Have we got an idea now of what sort of numbers we've got in the classified working dog registration band? I mean, well, I see we've deleted hunt clubs, but the hunt club still applies anyway, doesn't it?
Yes, it does, yeah.
So I think when Councillor O'Brien brought this to the attention, it was regards, as Councillor Boynton's already alluded to, the locals that live out in our satellite towns and our rural communities who have 1, 2 or 3 dogs. To define it as a working dog, I mean, I've got a little fella that's a working dog. He keeps the possums under control, but he'd hardly come into the category of being a working dog. And again, when you see the fee for $40 as opposed to the standard rate, if I could classify my dog as a working dog, that would certainly be the cheaper way to go.
Yeah, and you're right. A lot of it will rely on honesty, because you'll sign a form saying, my dog is a working dog. And a working dog, you might classify it as it's keeping the rats down, or it's a deer hurling dog, or whatever, but you're signing that piece of paper. And if for some reason, we find out that you've misled, then there's a penalty for that as well. But the idea is to get some of these dogs that aren't registered, that we don't know about, registered and microchipped. If you want to say your dog hunts rabbits on your farm, then get it registered. At least it's registered. And you're quite right, not everyone's going to come along. We know there's a percentage that aren't going to register their dogs, but this is just gives them kind of no choice when they get caught out. When they come back and say, well, it's too expensive, I've got 4 dogs.
But Mike, that's the very point you made there. If we found out that you had sort of misled us, You know, you're again talking about somebody that's actually come forward and attempted to register their dog, as opposed to those that don't register their dogs. I don't see how that's going to correct the situation that we've got now. And, you know, you can go into any town and you've got bloody dogs all over the show, and I guarantee they're not registered now, and they won't even be registered under this new policy.
And you're quite correct. There's always a percentage that won't be. I mean, we're not going to go out looking for people to misleading us. Like you say, I'm happy they're registered.
Steve wants to comment.
Mike, is there a definition for a working dog, a legislative definition?
There is in the Act. There's a whole string of them, like stock herding, police dog, and the last definition lets a territorial authority define a working dog. And that's the bit I'm proposing to change to include hunting dogs that are employed for a lawful hunting purpose. Very similar to what a Portuguese have just done.
And just the second point I had, you know, the behaviour that they're trying to incentivise here, the team, is just to get dogs registered. But I mean, if you've got some other ideas around how that might happen, we'll welcome it. But in the absence of another idea, can we proceed?
Can I just ask that we do need to keep this moving, so I don't think Councillor Isles needs to come up with an idea right now on the spot. Councillor Boynton?
I would just sort of had concern again, just highlighting around some of our communities that obviously are in poverty, and whether or not these types of laws sort of punish the poverty and those who are unable to even afford to register their dog, let alone, you know, pay fines on top of the struggle that they're already going through. So that's just a whakaaro. I'm just worried about that. Our less fortunate communities with dogs.
And hence the proposal to make the fee $40 instead of $70 to try and get them to register their dogs. It's sort of not designed to penalise them, it's designed to encourage and have lawful dogs.
Okay, right. Can we move on to seizing dogs? I'm just conscious we've got 50 minutes and we've only covered 3 of the 28.
But in saying that, Madam Chair, this is an important subject covering a wide range of topics. Maybe we should let the conversation flow and come back after lunch to it.
We have other things scheduled for after lunch, Councillor Dennis, so we need to try to...
To be fair, I think we're discussing it tomorrow as well, under the bylaws. It'll come up again.
Right, we've got seizure fees.
So the seizure fee is, under the Act, we're allowed to charge reasonable fees to recover costs. The seizure fee used to be in the fees and charges. It's on all our impound forms, but it's not in our fees and charges. Rotorua Lakes use it quite well to try and recover costs for the cost of going out and getting a dog, seizing it from private address. It wouldn't be used all the time, but in the dogs that have been impounded since July last year, 314 of them could have been charged this fee and haven't been. So it's just to give us a tool in the toolbox, really. It's not going to be used 100% of the time.
Councillor Isles.
So, Mike, a seizure fee is different to an impounding fee, right?
Correct.
So what actually defines a seizure fee? A dangerous or waiver dog, is it?
Well, if I get a dog trapped out in Te Teko and I've got to send 2 officers out to grab it, they might know whose dog it is. So we'll seize it, but we might not impound it. Like last week, we took it back to the owner. So you could charge a seizure fee there if you wished. Or if I've got to prepare a search warrant and go to a house, get 3 or 4 officers to come with me, there's a cost in that, and that's where you try and it's only a small cost, but you try and recover some of it.
Okay, but if that seizure fee was relating to a dog that had actually been killing sheep, that dog would be seized and forfeited, right?
Correct. And they will get charged a seizure fee as well.
Right. Okay.
Councillor Hamill.
I'm supportive of these changes. I think it's well done on just being innovative and trying to work with our communities. Seizure fee, obviously that's not for dogs that are neglected, that would come under SPCA inspectorate calls?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Right, let's move on to the next one. Thank you, Nancy and Mike. Building and food. Lisa.
Do I just talk to you? No, that's all right. So we're proposing to introduce, well, it's one new fee, which is associated with the second fee there. So there was some change in legislation towards the end of last year around small standalone dwellings, so what MB call granny flats. People that want to pursue that path are required to apply for a project information memoranda. So those have been around for a long, long time, but this is it's a more involved, I guess, process than the standard PIM process. What am I going to say? We've received so far 5 applications, and at the moment, until our consenting system has had that new functionality put in there where we can use kind of an electronic system to manage these, we've processed those 5 quite manually, and an actual cost came through at about $1,500. So I suppose we've estimated or done our best guess at what the actual cost would be going forward once we go into an electronic platform. So we've come up with $1,000 deposit. We've called it a deposit, I suppose, just in case it is a bit more complicated and we do actually spend a lot more time. But we're thinking that the cost will sit at $1,000 for those kind of PIMs. Once our system is able to process those, there is an online service provider fee as part of our objective build consenting process, so we need to incorporate that into the fees and charges.
Cool. Any questions on those two for Lisa? Councillor Mick.
You can just explain the online, good morning, Lisa.
Hi, good morning.
Sorry. Just explain the second one again.
Oh, online service provider fee is the fee for accepting certain applications or types of application through our online consenting system. So it used to be called Alpha One, now called Objective Build. So they charge us a certain fee, let's just say, for the application of a building consent, the application of a PIM, the application of a certificate of acceptance. So when they introduce this new functionality for us to be able to end-to-end process these new PIMs, they will charge us $250, and that fee has been on-charged to the customers, like previous consenting customers and that kind of thing. So it's usually built into that fee.
Councillor Isles.
Thank you, Chair. Minor residential dwelling as opposed to tiny homes.
Yeah, so there's a different definition for MB. It's actually not called minor residential dwelling. Under the Building Act, it's small standalone dwelling. So I'm not sure where that particular wording came from, but I'll work with the team, I guess, just to define that. I have since spoken to David, though, so there is another project information memorandum that's been around for a long time. I wanted to differentiate the application of that one to this one, but he has suggested that we just have one fee with a deposit plus actual costs. And I guess my reasoning for this is I wanted people that applied for these to kind of understand the likely cost of this application. So, yeah, I can work with him as to whether he wants to add a new one or just have, I guess, the deposit plus actual costs. But I think that it'll be clearer, I think, for our customers around the actual cost of these different types.
Right, not seeing any more questions. The other fees related to the Food Act.
Thank you. I guess we just wanted to implement this cost simply for helping out some of our food businesses in the local area that often come into us to request to have the food control plans printed off for them, whether it be due to language barriers and they're unable to locate the actual plans on the MPI website. So I just thought by implementing a small fee to basically recover costs of printing these documents for the businesses.
Any questions? Run while you can.
Thank you.
No, thanks, Nancy. I think that makes good sense. It's just a cost recovery exercise, so Lovely. Oh, sorry, Councillor Boynton has a question.
Is there many marae that have to go through this process?
No, they're exempt.
Okay, thank you.
Lovely, thanks, Nancy. Right, have we got libraries and museums? Just you going to do it, Alex?
Yeah, tēnā koutou, yes. Our manager library is away, unwell, so I will take this one.
Good.
Bonnie and the team have gone through a process to look at other libraries of similar size and service offerings to look at a way of recovering some costs for the use of spaces in our library and museum buildings that are used regularly by groups and members of the public, and these are the proposed rates that they have come up with through that process.
Okay, Councillor Isles.
Alex, the Pipi room and the Murupara room, they're Pacific in their hourly rate. What about the power room on application? Why would that be so different?
So the power room is the upstairs space in Te Wharetonga or Takitaki, and because of its proximity to taonga and some of the considerations in terms of appropriate museum practices, there just needs to be a consideration as to what type of activity would be happening there.
But no proposed fee.
It would be similar, but depends if there's particular cleaning required or additional work that requires extra time.
Okay, so as needed. Okay, thank you. Any other questions on those first three? No, we'll move down to the bottom two there.
And these rooms are part of the Te Koputu Ātewhanga Atoi building. These rooms are used quite regularly, and we do see certain commercial business activities happening in these spaces as well, and these are also relevant to other bookable spaces in Whakatane.
No, I'm not seeing any questions, so thanks, Alex. We can move on to, I suppose it's you again, community halls, or Ian, is it? Welcome, Ian. Oh, sorry, you've got a question?
And I know it's probably been asked long ago, but when we first opened up this building, there was this sort of idea that some of these rooms here in this building were going to be available for community to be able to hire them for meetings and things like that. Has that been considered?
Yes, there was a process that was carried out through the customer services, and those spaces are available. There have been rates set, and so that is a facility available to the public as it is now.
That's good to know, because on other occasions we've asked and they said they're not available. So that they are available and there is a rate that people can...
Yeah, there are conditions in terms of use, in terms of whether it conflicts with our use of the building and the spaces. But there are, smaller meeting rooms plus the space that's available upon request.
Thank you.
Right, well, welcome to the table, Ian.
Thank you, kia ora, councillors. Just on community halls, there's a few changes there, as you can see. The waste disposal fee, looking at introducing a fee for the Whakatane Hall. Currently there's no fee, and users are actually required to remove their own waste, so this just gives them an opportunity to use our skip bin, which is down there as well, so that they can either choose to use it or not. The second one is around access to the hall. There's now a new Salto access system has been introduced at the Whakatane Hall and will be rolled out to the Aopi Hall as well. And that's an electronic system, so what we're proposing there is just for each user will get access to the app, and that'll be $10 per year. And then for the Salto fob itself, would be a $20 fee for that. The mobile app could be, a particular user group could have they could have 5 people that access, that need to access the hall, and they will be charged that $10 fee each for that. And then obviously for the number of fobs that they use as well, they'll be charged for those. The cleaning fee as well, looking to add a cleaning fee just for Edgecombe, War Memorial and the Hopi Hall, and rural hire as well. Rural halls as well. And that's, currently there's only a cleaning fee for Whakatane and Hopi as well. So looking at introducing a fee for these other halls as well at $100 per hour. And noting that hires can clean the facility themselves as well.
Councillor Mick.
Yeah. Morning, Ian. Thank you for that. Is that Salto app at the push of a button can give you access to whole lot of data of how many users or how what the recovery is? Or
Yes,
the
I'm
length
sure,
of time they're
yeah.
in there and out?
Yeah, I'm not 100% across it. It actually sits with our properties team, but you will be able to, get certainly user data out of that, I'm sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Councillor James.
I take it these fees are on top of the hire of the hall?
Yes, they are.
So what's the actual daily hire of a hall? Because
It
I've
varies
charged
per
a lot.
hall, yeah. And I think it varies per activity as well, so it's depending on what sort of activity is happening in each facility. I don't know what they are off the top of my head, unfortunately.
Should we be looking at lifting that rate as well?
Well, these particular fees which we're introducing here are actually, they're not, the waste disposal, for example, that's if you want to use it or not, so it's not good, adding it to the actual hire of the hall. Some users choose not to use it. And the same with the cleaning fee. So rather than hiking the fees, we're just offering these additional fees if they choose to, want to go that way. The Salto one, they will have to actually, they will be required to, to sign up for that. But, and that there again just depends on the number of users for the facility. But they, that require apps and fobs.
Steve.
And just following on from Councillor James' question, just checking, is there an inflationary adjustment to our sort of general halls increases? Yeah.
Yes.
So there'll be an inflationary adjustment.
Yep.
These ones are really just ones that sit outside of the inflationary adjustment. Just bringing them to your attention.
Councillor Hamill, I saw you move the mic there.
I would just be interested to hear the community feedback on this, and I wonder whether the Salto mobile app and fob for some of our older residents might be challenging, but I'll be interested to see what the feedback is.
It would work similarly to like the Whakatane Tennis Club system.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which has had sometimes some technical issues.
Right, okay, no more questions for community halls then. We'll move on through to our next one, which is cemeteries and the crematorium.
Right, for these ones, for the crematorium, cemeteries and crematorium, we're proposing a self-backfill fee for burials which are carried out. So families can request to actually backfill the graves after burials, and what we're actually finding is that it's actually taking our staff a lot more time to actually tidy up after this has happened, and we're finding that people are leaving shovels in the holes, and that the mats are half in the holes, and it's so it's actually quite, there is extra time having to be spent there, and sometimes extra expense to replace materials and that. So we're proposing a $250 fee there. And the next one, the next fees relate to the crematorium. So we now have, we allow family-led cremation. So what that means is that, well, generally what would happen is that a cremation would come through a funeral director. There are a number of forms which have to be completed, and there's about six forms that have to be completed. Some of them require the medical referee sign-off, they require doctor sign-off. And what's happening now is we're actually getting families coming directly to council requesting that they undertake, or do the funerals themselves, the preparation for the cremation itself. And it's actually loading our staff up. We're actually having to coach, people through the process. We're having to follow up on paperwork. They come back just before cremation. They haven't completed the paperwork, and we can't cremate until all those forms are actually signed off. So that's the reason for that. And that's in line with Tauranga as well. They have a similar sort of system as well where they charge people for that service. The next one relates to oversized caskets as well. What's happening as well is that as soon as you get over a certain size casket, it doubles the cremation time. So it's actually in effect doubles the cost of the cremation. So what we're asking for there is that we actually recognise that additional cost and just pass that fee on to or that charge on to the families.
Councillor Isles?
Pass the fee on to the family or on to the funeral director?
It'll be
The same thing.
same thing, yeah. So if it comes to the funeral director, they will be charged that fee, and then they will pass it on to the family. And if it's a family-led cremation where people come directly to us, we will charge them that fee.
Right. So it's up to the funeral director to actually collect that fee, not council?
Correct, yes.
And then could I just add in terms of the terminology, there are casket sizes that funeral directors speak in, so it might be just designating what size casket would meet that threshold.
Yep.
I know that's a discussion we've had before where the funeral director actually has to carry the debt for a service that we've provided, which is contentious.
Any other questions? No, lovely. We'll move on to Parks and Reserves.
Right, with Parks and Reserves, we currently have a service charge for application and processing fee for all our reserve bookings, but that's one fee for all our bookings. So we do have different sort of category of bookings, and what we'd like to do is actually break them into a low risk category, a medium risk and a high risk. And just some examples on those could be a low risk fee is a wedding that's held on a reserve. So that's a minimum charge of $46, which would stay the same. A medium risk would be a slightly bigger event. It could be something like Jazz in the Park, where it actually requires our staff to actually meet with the organisers and spend time with them to actually go through the process. And then we're proposing a higher risk or a high risk free, which is for our high risk events, such as could be the kapa haka, could be league tournament, those types of events which require multiple meetings and interactions with the actual organisers as well. So the staff are spending a lot more time. Obviously, the higher the risk, they're spending a lot more time. It increases the time that they spend on those as well. Sorry.
Thanks.
Okay. The next one is a late application fee for reserve hire. So we currently have one which is applied once, and what we're finding is that some people, we actually had, obviously there are deadlines which had to be met, and Annie spoke about it earlier on in terms of having traffic management plans and that in as well. So with us is we need to make sure that is all lined up prior to the event. If it's not there in time, we've only have one fee at the moment, so it's $169. But what we're finding is that some organisations are happy to pay that $169, and yet they still do not meet the deadlines. They just keep dragging it out, sometimes right until the day before the event. So it puts pressure on everybody else. So what we'd like to actually do is introduce this fee that, from the cut-off point that every 3 days they get charged, to try and get them to get their applications in on time.
Councillor Boynton.
Will that risk people just not getting a permit at all?
Sorry?
Will that risk people just not getting a permit at all?
No. This is mainly for our large events, so things like kapa haka, as I mentioned, and rugby league tournaments, where they're large-scale events, so they have to meet certain criteria to be able to run that event. It's not just a standard, the wedding in the Rose Gardens, for example, that it wouldn't apply to that.
Any other questions? No, lovely. We'll move on to, miscellaneous.
Yes, so Paul's not here today. This one was for overdue accounts as a part of our credit policy. Yeah, sorry, I can't give you much more on this one, apologies.
Debt collection fee, is it?
Well, I was going to do a little bit of a summary at the end, but, this is part of one of the themes here, is changing some behaviours. And we do have a number of people who just take advantage of a system that allows them to not pay their bills. And I think what Paul is proposing here is one mechanism to encourage people to pay bills on time. Reduce those non-rates debtors. Yeah.
And we would still have the ability, I take it, in hardship cases to waive that fee. Yeah. Lovely. Any other questions?
So is that going to be $100 every month or until it's paid, or with just one $200 and then they can forget about it?
I'm not 100% sure of what the implementation is, but I suspect it's a one-off penalty.
Looks like it's a one-off admin fee, so. No other questions. We'll move on to swimming pools.
So Dylan is poolside at the moment and can't be here, so I will take this one here. We have proposed an energy surcharge related to the increase in energy costs around the heating for the pool. And we have talked about whether we charge admission for the Murupara pool as well, and that's currently freely accessible to the Murupara community. As you can see there, they're ones that need some consideration, and whether this is the appropriate time or whether that is best left for the LTP.
So just to add to that, if we leave it to the LTP, then we would get better public consultation and input than if we did it as part of the annual plan process, or?
I mean, that could be expected, not to say that it wouldn't be if it was just through the fees and charges process itself.
Thank you. Councillor Dennis?
Wouldn't the increase in energy costs be offset by the fact we put solar power on the roof?
It's reduced the increase of energy costs, but it hasn't eliminated the energy cost.
Lainey, did you want to comment as well?
Well, I think something to consider perhaps before the paper comes back to the council meeting is, as Alex has alluded to, the LTP is likely to have significant other aspects to consult with the public on. So you as council may decide that actually this is one you want to treat out of that cycle, because it may get more prominence in this fees and charges. It may not. We can't actually predict that, but you might want to split it out within a fees and charges process rather than lump it together into what's likely to be a reasonably in-depth LTP consultation.
Councillor Isles and Councillor Dennis?
Thank you, Chair. The Murupara admission, the cost of installing a facility, would it outweigh the actual?
Potentially.
Yeah. So we really going down a rabbit hole with that one?
And that's why we think it's a decision that needed to be discussed and thought about.
Okay, so it's not actually set in concrete that it'll be in the LTP even?
That will be for you to decide. Yes.
Councillor Dennis?
In regard to my previous question and the very good answer from the Chief Executive, can I suggest communication, that when we do this for putting it out there, that we actually say what the actual rate increase would be due to energy minus the effect, and then people will say that we've actually taken this whole thing into consideration, and people will go, oh, understand.
And just to summarise, because this is not a decision making, you are not wanting that answer now, you are just putting a question mark for us to consider when we do come to make a decision on it.
We'll try to make it really clear in the council paper. You've actually got a number of different choices within even just this one charge. So you could do the energy increase just in the fees and charges change, but save the murupara for the LTP, or you could do them both at the same time, or you could do neither. None of this is compulsory by any means.
Excellent. Yes?
So this is just for this particular charge that there's a indication that we might give as whether it goes into the LTP or not. This is not for all the other charges that we've been discussing today. So whereabouts are all of the consultation for all these other new charges going to be with the public?
So we will be developing a consultation pack with frequently asked questions and a statement of proposal that will identify what we're proposing in terms of changes and why we're proposing them. And that will go out through our public consultation normal methods.
When is that going to go out as part of being part of the consultation for the bylaws, or is it going to go out separately?
That will be a separate process.
Okay, thank you.
Right, I don't see any other questions. Better just keep it moving.
Can I just clarify, sorry? So when we come back to you with that pack in April, mid-April, where we have our consultation material developed, do you want the murupara admission to be in or out of that material?
I personally say leave it as it is, but what's the general feeling around the table?
Again, I would say, looking at the high deprivation of that area and the isolation from Whakatane, I'd really prefer to see it left as it is.
Remembering it's a consultation document, do you consult on the higher one knowing that you don't make a decision? If we go back to the timeline, you'll see in the timeline, slide 3 I think it is, after the consultation, that's when you make your final decisions. I think that's what Sarah's checking. Should it be proposed in the consultation with a rationale?
Have a fee, to have a fee.
Is that you're talking about this consultation on fees and charges versus the long-term plan?
This consultation.
This consultation that will go out in April.
You don't have to decide until the 16th of April, but I think the team are just wanting to understand when they bring that paper to you, are they proposing that we put it in or proposing that we leave it out and then you make the decision? It's just a bit more direction.
Andrew and I have started off and said leave it out, so we're just seeing what everybody else's thoughts were.
Again, too, Madam Chair, it might be good to ask the Councillor Ranui for his opinion.
Jesse, have you got some thoughts on it? Is the councillor representing the area?
Yeah, probably prefer to, talk about it a bit later on and have some more thought around it. It's a bit of a tricky one, in particular for our area.
Thanks, Jesse. Do anybody else have any other opinions?
Okay, to leave it out for now and bring it back in at the LTP.
Yeah.
I think I would too, given that we're closely working with Ngāti Manama at the moment, and there's different parts of their master plan that involve, the pools and stuff. It makes sense to be able to take the time to work that out. Thank you.
So is everybody generally happy to leave it out for now as part of the consultation?
Yeah, but I do think when it comes back to the LTP, we need to see some numbers.
Yeah.
Like users, costs. Yeah.
The cost of having somebody there collecting fees and all of that sort of, collecting the fee, so, yep.
Because we're going to be going out for consultation on all these things, and obviously the LTP has its own process as well, just how efficient are we being in terms of having these multiple public consultations. We've got the regeneration one going on at the moment. We're going to have the bylaws one. We're going to have these fees ones. We know how our whānau, our communities get fatigue in terms of the amount of public consultations that are going on or campaigns that are going on. What is going to be most effective, I guess. I guess you've already considered that, but I just wanted to ask. Thanks.
Yeah, that does get considered constantly, and in particular the communications team keeps a very close eye on what consultation is going on at any point, and where the increased workload or increased communication might be. However, the other thing to bear in mind is that also council runs on certain timeframes. They are driven by expiry dates and legislative requirements to have things in place. So usually what happens is councils are staggering and able to do that, and I believe this is pretty well staggered, in particular because we're not doing annual plan consultation. Works quite well. However, there are cases where you might have 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 consultations out all at the same time, communities just have to deal with that, particularly in larger councils. They'll often be running multiple engagements at the same time. But yes, to answer your question, the team does consider that and does work to stagger things to try and make sure that there's not an excessive volume of consultation at any one point.
Right. Oh,
Liz.
Councillor Emmett.
Liz.
We've still got quite a few slides to go, Liz, and I know she is, but this is about fees and charges, not about the consultation. So, could you summarise it quite briefly, Liz, for us?
Yeah, sure. I just wanted to add to what Stephen's just said with regards to consultation and engagement fatigue for our communities. The communications and engagement team have a consultation calendar where we map out all of the expected consultations right across any given year. And to Steve's point around how, some other councils might have 10 at the same time, that can also be a positive in terms of being able to group together consultation activities so that you might have, I don't know, a pop-up at Taniatua Domain, and within that pop-up you are asking for the community's feedback on a variety of topics. So it's not necessarily a bad thing if it's done well.
Lovely. Oh, thanks for that lovely summary, Liz. Okay, right. Shall we get back to the next slide, which is just a... I think that's self-explanatory. Shall we?
Sorry, yeah.
Move on to the next ones.
So the next section here is a summary of increased charges being proposed. So these are charges that are above the inflationary rates. So first up we have the port.
We'd like to call Mark back to the table.
Kia ora again. This is a little bit of a fixing up a glitch proposal. So when we went through this proposal, this process last time, I think the fees and charges for a 1 minute wash were set at $2.50. And so we implemented that, changed all our documentation, signage, and then we found at the last minute there was a limitation with the system and it couldn't actually do 50-cent increments. So we had to leave the actual price at $2, although we advertised it at $2.50. So this proposal, although it's, it is significant in terms of the percentage increase, it's sort of, there's a little bit of backdating in there really, and yeah, that's what this is proposing to do, is just rectify that little glitch.
Cool. Any questions for Mark? Lovely, thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Out of the hot seat. Building.
Lisa's engaged elsewhere at the moment, but are there any questions that we can put to her for these? So it's largely similar to the new charges before. So it's to do with the online service provider, and these are on-charged to the customer.
Anybody have any questions? We can always reserve the right to email them to Lisa if needed. Councillor Emmett?
Probably the only comment is that sometimes we receive feedback about the price of consenting and trying to do stuff in the district. Is it possible we can get some other council comparatives, just so that this makes it a lot easier to say for a council our size like Taupo that we're actually 10% less than what Taupo charges or Wairarapa charges. I think it just helps us with the narrative. I don't know if it's expensive or not because I've never built anything, but people do tell me.
Councillor James?
You've got under memoranda that GST excluded. I take it all the other charges are inclusive.
That's correct.
Okay, right. Well, we can email if there are any extra questions. I guess that's going to go through to the next page as well, but is there anything to highlight, Sarah?
No, nothing to.
Oh, no, here's Lisa.
Sorry.
We were just on page the 31 about the building consent application fees, and I don't think there was any questions so much on that page. Councillor Emmett?
Yeah, Lisa, it was just how these compare to other councils of similar size. Like, are we more expensive, less expensive?
Yeah, so before we looked at increasing any of our fees or fee ranges, I got my team to go out to similar sized councils and do a bit of a look through their fees and charges, and we kind of sat at an average. So yeah, that's how we've based, I guess, our increases, particularly for the, I guess, 11.1.1. We hadn't reviewed that fee for probably about 4 years, so it's around about time I think we did that. Okay. And yeah, we did go out and do a bit of research to make sure that we were kind of on par with similar sized councils.
Excellent. So on to the 32, the solid heat fuel. Was there anything you wanted to highlight there, Lisa, for us?
Sorry, is that the next? Yeah, so we did a similar thing. We've charged that rate for a long, long time. We went out to similar councils and we were probably around about the cheapest at $3.85. Some councils charge actual cost, and when we looked and we made some inquiries, they were looking at around almost $1,000 mark. Oh. So again, we kind of said we'll go somewhere in the middle.
Any questions of Lisa? Lovely. Oh, thank you, Lisa. Thanks for popping back.
That's all right. Sorry, I was late.
No. Well, you weren't. Oh no, sorry. Look, we've got another. No, I've missed it. Sorry, we've got one more page of building. Sorry.
Sorry, it was around the PIM. So there's the fee itself. Is there any part to processing a PIM that has an hourly rate? No? Is it just that one-off cost?
So the PIM fee that we were talking about before for granny flats, is that like? Yeah, so like I say, when we've processed the 5 that we've received, we looked at actual cost and it came at around $1,500, doing things quite manually because our automated system hasn't been implemented yet. So we kind of thought, look, once that is in, it's probably actual cost going to come in at about $1,000, and that's what we would expect, I guess, to give some certainty for those applicants that that's around about the fee. But we do have the ability, I suppose, we've put plus actual cost, just in case we get one of those really back and forth grunty ones when we've kind of had to really work to get the information. So that would allow us, I suppose, to charge a fee. But I wouldn't expect to. I'd really like to provide our customers that certainty around it's going to be $1,000.
Right, no other questions on that last one for Lisa? No, don't see any. Thanks, Lisa. We're back onto dogs again. some
These-
minimal
yeah,
increases
minimal
there.
increases here.
Yep. Okay, we're happy with that. Right, we'll move along. Food control. Looks like gone up $5 on both. Happy with that? Oh, look, well, they're racing now. Right, licence and permit fees. Storage of an impounded vehicle from 1540 to 20. Sorry, Jay Wilson?
Is that a daily charge or one-off?
It's a good question, actually.
question.
Is that a daily charge or a one-off?
We will check, but whatever it was will be what it will be. That's a terrible answer. I think you know what I'm trying to say.
Politicians answer that one.
Per day.
Per day.
That is per day.
Okay, lovely. Thank you for
No
that
problem.
clarification. Right, increased charges for swimming pools.
So this one is to essentially find a midpoint between the child fee and an adult fee, and looks at increasing the student and senior citizen rate to lift that to somewhere around in between $3.50 and I think $7 for an adult. The shower fee is, we do have people who come specifically to use just the showers in the facility. We have quite high demand on these facilities, particularly with the family rooms that are available for people who have accessibility challenges and young children or families. So it's recognising that there is high demand and again, the draw on resources.
Right, thank you. I had Councillor Dennis, then Councillor Isles, then Councillor James.
So that 30 cents energy thing will go on top of that? That we talked about earlier on, new charge of 30 cents for energy.
Surcharge. I'm not sure.
Good question.
Good question.
Check that out.
Yeah.
I actually think we talked about this, not sure if you were there, but it was actually in, it might have been including it in that, but just identifying it as a surcharge, because I don't think they wanted to get into the funny numbers if you're adding on bits. But yeah, I think
I'm
it's
not
something-
anti it if people are using it for their showers, homeless and all that. Fair enough.
Okay, and you can just maybe clarify that
Yeah,
for us.
we'll look into that.
Whether it's like 360 plus 30 cents or whether that 30 cents is included. Councillor Isles and Councillor James.
Thank you. This is only for Whakatane, right?
Yes, sorry, this is the Whakatane Aquatic
So
Centre.
it should be swimming pool singular.
But there's more than one swimming pool at that venue. Keep going. Councillor James.
How do we differentiate a beneficiary, or do they have cards?
Yes, yeah, there are cards.
Okay.
Community services card.
Thank you.
Right, so no more questions on the swimming pool. We'll move on to the library.
So again, this is just having done some research and bringing us into what aligns with obviously TCC in particular, but other libraries as well. So this is, I guess, considering transport between libraries where books and items are being shared.
Lovely. Any questions? Good. Okay, so, oh gosh, sports grounds.
No comments? Next slide.
I doubt that, Steve, somehow. I think there'll be comments. Ian, did you want to highlight anything before we ask questions?
Just overall, that what's happening is with our sports fields is we're actually getting, we're adding floodlights to more and more of our sports fields at the moment, and obviously there's a long-term maintenance cost associated with those as well. So the lights are generally funded by Trust Horizon, and then they hand it over to council for us to maintain going forward. So we're just looking at adding looking at a cost, additional cost per field that has lights for users of those lights.
Thank you. Councillor Isles had a question.
Thank you, Chair. Again, the Waimana Domain, the lighting there, is that the responsibility of the rugby club? Or, again, there's issues come up as to who actually pays the power bill for those lights. And if I come back to when Pakitapo was organising the installation of them leading into Arowai so many years ago, it was a funding that was applied for, but it now appears that the so-called Waimana Sports and Cultural Club have to pay the power bill.
Correct. The users actually pay for the power, for the usage of the lights.
Sorry? Correct.
The users actually pay for the power that they use for the lights.
No, but that's what I'm saying. The actual club itself don't use the lights, but they're liable for the bill.
Yeah, well, that's something that we need to work out with the club, is we should be billing the actual users if the club are not using it. But generally during a season, what would happen is that the club would be charged, they would actually pay for the power bill, and as soon as at the end of the season, any usage after that would be, people would have to, the users would have to come to council. So if it's being used during the season, what I think has been happening is that the club sometimes charges the user for the use of those lights because they're paying for the power.
The club being
Waimana. Yeah. So if they're being billed for the power during the season, and if they're subletting it or if there are other users using it, then they need to make sure that they're recovering those costs from them.
Okay, and I think there's a conversation we've got to have offline because there's quite a bit of confusion. Yeah. Thank you.
Yep.
Was that your question, Councillor?
Yeah, it was just following on, because there's public loos there as well, there's power that goes to those loos. And so the club is paying for the power of that as well, are they?
No,
or separate?
no, that's separate. That's
separate meter.
Yeah.
Councillor Dennis?
So for the rugby park, here in Whakatane, my understanding is $1,385 was for mowing and all that sort of stuff and general maintenance. But now you've added in lighting, so we paying the power bill for the rugby park in Whakatane?
No, the users are actually paying for it themselves. So Eastern Bay Rugby Sub-Union, when they're using it during the season, they'll be paying for those lights.
The whole power bill, or do we charge them so much per practice?
They'll be charged for the usage. Yeah. We do reconcile the electricity accounts with the clubs at the end of the season as well, because we obviously have line charges which we end up paying. So they pay the power bills and then we reconcile at the end of the month, at the end of the season.
So that'd be the same with Waimana, I guess?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. If there's no other questions, we'll quickly scoot on to the community halls, which I think you might have pretty much covered this in your previous slide. Is that correct, Ian?
Correct, yes.
No further questions on that one then? Lovely. We'll scoot on to page 41, which is cemeteries.
Right, natural burials. So the cost of a natural burial at the moment is the same as a normal burial within our cemeteries. Natural burial is actually an exclusive option which we provide for people, and we do provide a tree as well for planting on the plot as part of that cost, which has not been included. So we're looking at actually increasing that fee to reflect the type of burial.
Councillor Limmer.
Thanks. Just an inquiry. How many natural burials are we getting a year?
Probably about 2 or 3 a year. It just depends. We've only had about 10 or 12.
Not many, okay.
No, it's not many. Yeah.
Right. No other questions. We're on to our last couple of slides, so...
Yeah, So, yeah, this is just considerations. It's just, I guess, to revisit where we were at the beginning of the presentation. So today's fees have been presented to you, proposed charges with the actual cost to deliver, market comparisons, also demand, affordability, impacts for our community and our council policy settings. So from here, what we will do is take your feedback from today. I think one of the key things was not taking the Murupara swimming pools through to a consultation, so that won't appear in the council paper that will come to you in April. So the new and increased fees that we've discussed today will come, we will put them into the schedule in a track changes version so that it's visible for the public what they are, and also prepare with our communications team a consultation pack for your consideration at the council meeting in April. Thank you. So yeah, thank you all for your time today, and I'll pass back to the chair and our chief executive for any other.
Lovely. So Steve's just going to make a couple of comments.
Sure, of course.
But first, before that, I'd like to thank yourselves and all the rest of the presenters for their time. It was a lot to get through, and we have managed to do it. Let's go with on time. So thank you very much. And finishing words before lunch, we will come back at 1:20. Steve, your final words.
I was just going to say first of all, thank you very much, team. Very painful process going through the fees and charges. You've essentially got to do it line by line. I thought the approach of going new fees, significant changes, and the rest is inflationary was a really good approach to get through it today. It's great. I just wanted to highlight too, when I looked at the stuff coming through, there were kind of three themes. One was inflationary adjustments. And the second theme was around some better business practices in our activities and people understanding where the costs are at a more granular level and some better sort of commercial acumen starting to come to the surface. So you had a couple of examples of that going through. And then the other area or the other theme was around just trying to correct some bad behaviours. There are people that don't pay things on time, trying to incentivise people to register things they need to, trying to penalise people for unauthorised access or taking advantage of situations. So that was the third area, and so I just sort of wanted to highlight that to you. That was sort of what I saw coming through, which I think is all actually really positive stuff. And then the other bit I wanted to test too was just coming back to, the level of fees and charges and that balance between fees and charges, or does it get pushed onto rates and residents paying it, and where should that balance lie? Just wanted to. 8% is low. I made that comment at the beginning, even if you chucked in waters, I just want to check that with Paul. I'm not sure about waters connections not being included, but nevertheless, even if you added that in, it's still probably below where I think it should be sitting, which is around about 12% of our revenue coming from fees and charges. So I just sort of wanted to test with the group whether there was any interest in some consultation on maybe it's an inflationary plus, a 0.2 or a 0.3%, just to try and get that shift and help put council in a better position going into the rates capping environment in 2029. So I was sort of wondering what councillors thought about that. And also, because remember, fees and charges, Councillor Boynton's already highlighted that she thinks fees and charges are mean, I think was the word, and actually would prefer to see them stay low, and individual households paying much higher rates in the district. But some of the other councillors, I thought it was, but some of the other councillors were going, actually, maybe that rates needs to shift a little bit more into that user pays around fees and charges. And the other point I'd like to make is for most of the fees and charges, you actually don't need to consult. So much like at the supermarket, they'll put up the cheese, they don't consult with anybody when they do that. So, council could consider, if it wanted to, moving into a situation where it just puts out its fees and charges schedule each year or 3 years or whenever it may be, and just say, this is our rationale and these are the fees and charges that we're now setting. So that's another thing for councillors to think about too. And if there are just sort of any general comments about those two things, I mean, they are not usual practices for this council, but they are practices, and I'm just really interested in hearing about that, if that's something that you might like to explore a little bit more or not.
Thank you. Councillor Boynton would just like to clarify something first.
Kia ora, yes. When I talked about the costs or the charges that are coming through being presented to us about seemingly being mean, I was putting it into the context of the current economic situation that many of our communities are going through. I did not state that I prefer that ratepayers should have to share the costs of that, so I wanted that to be clarified. And I understand the other wider picture of the political reforms that are happening within local government with the pending rates capping. It means that councils obviously have to look at other means in which they're going to recover their costs. I've said it before that the funding model for local government is broken and we only have whatever we have in the kitty, so we have to find other means. I understand that fully. My comments really is to acknowledge what our whānau are feeling at the moment and also try and provide a wider whakapapa or big picture of how and why all this mahi that you're doing and putting forward to us fits in to that bigger picture. So mihi to all of you for your mahi. We're just doing our jobs to raise those questions so that our whānau can hear the answers. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, one final comment from Councillor Whittaker.
Thank you. My query is sort of around the wharf shed over in Ohopi, and it was to do with the young man, Ollie Dobbin, I think it is, who was using some of that space and for his sup boards, etc. And that this year, I think the cost was for him to hire that was put up quite substantially, which means that obviously he decided that he couldn't afford to do it anymore. And I sort of wonder about that, because it's a bit like someone starts off using a space and you get them in there and then all of a sudden you decide, right, we'll bump up the cost of that space, and it makes it prohibitive. And yet, he's there from a point of economics for tourism, etc.
Okay, I think staff have noted that comment. Did you want to add anything?
I can come back to you on that, Malcolm, but it's not really relevant to the conversation today.
Okay.
It is quite a different part of the business. It's around our commercial premises. Thank you.
Okay.
Right, so I would just like to just quickly point out to the members of the public and anyone watching online that after lunch session is public excluded. So thanks everyone. We'll now make it that we will reconvene at 1:30. Thanks everyone. And